And they said we would never last. Happy New Year, folks. Welcome back to the internet's single greatest movie podcast, The Long Road to Ruin, featuring myself, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me for this next year of podcast movie greatness is my co-host and buddy, the man who brings life back to music, Mr. Sean Comer. How do you do, sir?
Folks, it is the man in the black hoodie who got it like Sam Goody. And let me tell you something. I love each and every last one of you, but crikey, fuck, 4 weeks off felt good.
Didn't it, though? I tell you what, a couple of weeks off to just sort of do some other stuff, take my daughter to the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, open presents on Christmas, just kick back and relax and clear my head. It got the juices flowing, and I am ready to start laying into some movie studios, because that's what we do here on The Long Road to Ruin, everyone. We look at movie franchises, and we slap the shit out of the movie studios that allowed these things to go from great to terrible. Ugh.
So they basically go from great to Beavis?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they do. All right, folks. We promised, God, I don't remember when I started putting out the schedule. I am a man about planning, you know what I mean? We put out the schedule a couple of months ago, and it said this is how we were going to go hot fire into the new year, 2014, the year of Jonas, as it were. We were going to start off with Aliens, then in 2 weeks, Predator, and then in 2 weeks after that, Aliens versus Predator. But we're not going alone. No. We've got a journey to take with one of Sean's buddies. And I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce our guest for tonight. But someone not from 411, oddly enough. This is brand new and exciting to The Long Road to Ruin. So take it away, Sean, who we got in the guest panel tonight.
Oh, man. Thanks. Well, I actually completely forgot to ask when we were doing the pre-show if you'd mind if I introduced him. Folks, when we started this show, I had several franchises in mind that I really had to get to, and I kind of had a little bit of a wish list of kind of dream guests that we could get on here. I thought it would be really fun to discuss certain franchises with those people. I kind of thought, gee, it'd be nice if I could maybe talk Scarlet into coming on the show, and we could talk Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. No, that's probably not going to happen. I thought, it'd be great if she ever had the time if I could get somebody on the show to talk about the Evil Dead trilogy. Well, we're going to get the Evil Dead trilogy, but it's not going to be with Allison. Then came this one. I kind of had our guest tonight in mind from the very get-go, because for some reason I thought in particular of Alien and Predator, and consequently Alien versus Predator, and this was the first guy that came to mind as a guest, as somebody who would really just love to dig into these and talk about why they're great, where they went wrong, and why they're just so damn lovable. Our guest tonight has actually been a friend of mine since, got to be going on about 7 years or so now. He is a Northwest Missouri State University journalism instructor. He is a mayor of Fort, Missouri, former bartender, father, ghost hunter, and author of Across a Corn-Swept Land. Jason, what's the subtitle to it again? I don't have that.
An epic beer run through the upper Midwest.
Yes, an epic beer run through the upper Midwest, which, as we'll let Jason explain, is, well, in this case, pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. Please welcome tonight my very good friend and, quite frankly, kind of a mentor of mine, Mr. Jason Offutt.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on the show, guys.
Well, we appreciate you being here, Jason. I want to get right into this, and I said this to Sean earlier today, and then we talked about it again during our pre-show prep, as it were. I said, when we started doing The Long Road to Ruin, I wanted to make sure that we not only talked about the artistry of filmmaking and all of that, but we also talked about the business side of it, because really, you really can't appreciate how a movie, that a concept could have so much potential and then the finished product be so awful without looking at the powers that be, the people in charge, the producers of said movie, the people who threw the money on the table and said, we want you to go make this thing, but we want you to do it this way. It's that struggle between the artist and the businessman. And the Aliens franchise, and to a lesser extent Predator, really embody for me that struggle between the studio and the artist. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to tackle this franchise, because Aliens really is the story of how several artists came together to try to create a really interesting concept and how a studio dog-fucked it all the way to the bank and back again. So with that having been said, I want to go over to our guest here and just tell us a little bit about, Sean gave you a great introduction there. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then if you would, how is it that you came to the Aliens franchise?
Well, mainly, I've been a nerd for a very, very long time. I've been interested in science fiction ever since I was a little kid, growing up watching Planet of the Apes and all sorts of Godzilla movies on Saturday afternoon. So I've been huge into science fiction. One of the main things that I've been interested in, the ongoing theme, are extraterrestrials. And I'm 87 years old, so I saw a few of these movies we're going to talk about in the theater. Not Alien. I was a little bit too young for that, but these movies really hit home, because Alien, especially because it was the first one that actually scared the shit out of me. Okay, it was a scary movie. I mean, that's the Predator movies. One of the main reasons that I got in touch with those is, well, I'm a child of I spent my formative years in the 80s with watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. So anything he was in, I was going to watch, and I absolutely loved the creature, the Predator. I felt like there's a story out there about some general going to DARPA and showing a clip from the Predator, of the Predator, being able to blend into his surroundings. And he said to a scientist, I want my soldiers to be able to do this. Okay, I feel kind of like that. I want to see this stuff actually happen.
I was not. I didn't actually see the first Alien in theaters. In fact, I'll tell you guys quick how I came to this franchise. The second Alien movie, Aliens, came out in 1986, which makes me all of 10 years old when it comes out. And I want to say Howard the Duck had to have come out around the same time. Now, why is that relevant? Because I remember my grandmother, my best friend, her son, and my father and I all went to the movies together. And my father's not a big fan of horror movies, but he is a huge science fiction person. Read a lot of Heinlein, was a big Star Trek fan. And I kind of followed after him. And so he and Marie decided, my den mother, decided that they were going to take us and, two 10-year-olds to go see Aliens in 1986. And I had no knowledge.
Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
How did they explain, when they took you to see Howard the Duck first, how did they explain the duck having sex with Leah Thompson?
I'm going to get to that in just a moment. So they decided they're going to take us to go see Aliens, and I have no knowledge of the Alien movie. I have no idea what it is we're going to see. I just know that I've seen the commercials, and as Sean can attest to, when we've talked about the Paranormal Activity podcast and Scream and all that, I'm a big wussy pansy. I don't like horror movies. I don't like to be frightened. I like monsters, but they can't be gross. I don't like a lot of gross on the screen. So why my father thought this was a good idea, I'll never know. But
yeah, kids, this is why you have to wait until April to hear me talk about Saw.
Yeah, exactly. So he says we're going to this movie, and I realize what it is we're going to see. And I actually said to my father at the time, I said, look, why don't you and Marie go see Aliens? Because I have no interest in this thing. I don't want to see gross aliens on, on the big screen, and whoever this Sigourney Weaver person is, I don't understand any of this stuff. I'm going to go, let me go see Howard the Duck. That's more my speed. And as it turns out, Howard the Duck was actually a bigger horror film than Aliens, but we'll talk about that in another time. So, he was like, look, and I don't remember his exact words. I mean, granted, this was, 20-some-odd years ago, because I am 87 as well. And I believe what my father said to me was, why don't you grow a sack, you pansy? Get the fuck in the theater before I beat the shit out of you. As you would back in 1986. That's how you parented, see? You got to use a slightly lesser hand these days with the kids and the DCF. But back then, you could say, shut the fuck up, faggot, and get in the theater. So, as my father did.
I think I'm in man love with your dad.
I don't think he used those exact words, but something along those lines. As it turns out, mostly because of Bill Paxton, absolutely loved Aliens. Yes, it's a little gross, and some of the jump scare sequences were a bit much for me, but overall, to this day, I still love Aliens. And what kills me about that movie is that it could have been so much better. But we're going to get to that when we start talking about that movie. I want to go back to 1979. Yeah, May 25th, 1979, and talk about Alien. So let's go to my historian on the scene here, Mr. Sean Comer. Why don't you tell us how this movie came to be? What's going on with this thing that crossed science fiction with horror, in the sense that you essentially had a slasher movie set on a spaceship?
Well, you're asking me about the production of it. Really, the most interesting production stories I found in looking this up was really the fact that the alien of this movie, in a way, was kind of inspired by the fact that Dan O'Bannon, back when he was studying with John Carpenter and Ron Cobb at film school, once made a comedy called Dark Star. And in the course of making it, they did what you do when you have no budget and you're trying to make a science fiction movie. You make your monster out of what you happen to have on hand. As Robert Rodriguez would say, you work with what you have. Don't try so hard necessarily to strive for what you don't. So what they did was they spray painted a beach ball, and Dan O'Bannon decided, I'd really like to make something that kind of strikes a little more genuine terror into people. So he starts basically on a story that is really what we today, who are gamers, would kind of recognize as survival horror. A situation in which you're stuck in a very enclosed place with no way out, few means of defense, and something that wants to kill you in new and nasty ways. So what he kind of ended up getting was what eventually became Alien. And the funniest stories about this are really about some of the casting decisions. Namely the fact that when they cast, when they cast Harry Dean Stanton as Brett, the engineering tech aboard the Nostromo, first thing he said to Ridley Scott when he was interviewing for the part, I don't like sci-fi or monster movies. Turned out that it just amused Ridley so much that he went right the fuck ahead and talked him into it anyway when he finally convinced him. It's not going to be so much a thriller. It's going to be more like 10 Little Indians, which wasn't entirely a lie. Also, Sigourney Weaver, although Ridley Scott and company really liked her right off the bat, this wasn't exactly her first choice either. She apparently auditioned very well, last performer who was cast, but was still a little bit reluctant. However, Ridley Scott and company were kind of a little more determined because they felt that if they had a strong heroine of this type, brought what only Sigourney, as Alien Resurrection proved, could really bring to the role, they felt that this was going to make the movie stand out. It was going to really make this whole thing kind of a brief part. And of course, as it turned out, it was her first leading movie role, garnered her a Best Actress Saturn Award, and a Most Promising Newcomer to Leading Film Role award from BAFTA. So, I mean, it's also kind of worth noting the reaction that Roger Ebert had to the movie, and it's a lot of stuff that we're going to kind of elaborate on as we go. If you don't mind my reading it kind of verbatim before we turn things over to the next topic. Quote, none of them were particularly young. Tom Skerritt, the captain, was 46. Hurt was 39 but looked older. Ian Holm was 48. Harry Dean Stanton was 53. Yaphet Kotto was 42. And only Veronica Cartwright at 30 and Weaver at 29 were in the age range of the usual thriller cast. Many recent action pictures have improbably young actors cast as key roles or sidekicks, but by skewing older, Alien achieves a certain texture without even making a point of it. These are not adventurers, but workers hired by a company to return 20 million tons of ore to Earth. This is, in every possible way, one of the least conventional hit science fiction movies of all time, in a lot of ways that we're going to get to very, very briefly.
One of the elements of any good movie is that no matter how fantastic your idea, cars that change into robots, twins that can pilot a robot to punch a monster in the face, anything that sounds so far out there you can hardly imagine it, is you at least have to remain consistent in your own universe, and within that universe, you have to take the audience for a ride with you. I don't want to necessarily use the word believable, but at least you don't want to create such a jarring contrast from scene to scene that people are taken completely out of the movie. One of the things that you're talking about here is that Alien was, and this is something I want to talk with Jason about. Alien is a slow build. They take a lot of time to introduce you into this dystopian future, this very, very dark, dim, dreary, almost Dickensian future where you have middle-aged workers on a freighter who are thrown into a fantastic, horrifying circumstance, but prior to that had just been everyday people. So in that sense, it's believable. If it's not on a spaceship, you could still imagine this happening in some sort of warehouse or mine or something, and that was the impression you were supposed to get. And so again, it takes a long time for the movie to sort of unravel and even get you to the point where they start to introduce the xenomorphs. And because they never really get out of that, even as the alien is chasing them around the ship and stuff, you're still there. You're still in that universe. You're never taken out of it. But here's what I wanted to discuss with Jason. As I said, back in the 70s, they used to make movies. They don't really make movies anymore. They make the feature that you would show in a simulator ride. You know, if you ever go to Universal Studios and go on what used to be Back to the Future, it's now The Simpsons, or Star Tours, or Body Wars. You know, they put you in a little seat, they put you really close to a movie screen, and they shake the chair. So you're not watching a movie as such. You're on a thrill ride. That's what they make now. They make a lot of The Avengers, for example, as I've said many times on this podcast, was a awesome thrill ride. It wasn't a fucking movie, I'll tell you that much. It was an event. And back in the 70s, though, they used to make movies that took time to introduce you to strange worlds, new worlds, even if even it was Bonnie and Clyde, it still took you some time to get into that time period and into that little universe, and gave you time to get to know the characters and get you invested in what was going on before they started to shake things up and do stuff to these people so that you would continue to be interested and see what was going to happen next, right? So before you get to see the first egg, before the chest burster jumps from John Hurt, before you see the alien go hissing and booing and scratching and clawing its way through the space jockey, it takes a good 45 minutes. And boy, is this a quiet movie. I swear to God, I watched this recently. On Blu-ray and HD and stereo speakers and surround sound. And my God, would you turn that down, Mark, is what my wife would say. And these fucking people mumbled through half of that movie. And my question to you, Jason, is based on any of that. First of all, you feel free to agree or disagree with what I'm saying here. But do you think Alien could get made today in the same way? Do you think there could be a movie made in 2014 where the first 45 minutes are as quiet and as slow burn as the original Alien movie? And even after you would start introducing all of these elements, I mean, the final climactic sequence is Ripley quietly trying to blow the thing out the airlock before it wakes up. Could you make that movie today? Why or why not?
Well, no. Yes, you probably could, but you would have to find the right studio to give it a chance. But generally, no. The movies today, they want their monsters right out front. And the problem that we have with today's movie is storytelling. There's not a lot of storytelling in movies today. The way you were describing the build-up and the characters and the type of characters, it's like reading a Stephen King novel. He sets his universe. He sets his people, common everyday people that you could run into on the street. Everything's going on nicely. They're going to the grocery store, and then he lets the monsters out. After 100 pages or so, you don't see anything until 100 pages or so, and that is something that is drastically missing. And no, I don't think it could really get made today, realistically. You got to have somebody to care about. Okay? All these characters, yeah, they're average Joes. They could be working in a warehouse, like you said. That's the beauty of it. People watching this movie can identify with these people because they're just people doing a job. Who couldn't identify with Harry Dean Stanton? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I could. The only person I didn't like was Ian Holm, and I wanted to punch him in the face, but that was because you were supposed to want to punch him in the face. So I mean that's the beauty to me of this movie is the setup, and they get you nice and relaxed and comfortable. They're responding to an SOS signal, and then they let the monster out 45 minutes into it. I think it's beautiful, but yeah, no, today it's not going to happen. And I will take a little bit of exception with the Avengers. Yes, they hit you right up front, and it is a thrill ride. It's just a lot of action. But they don't have to do a lot of character development because who the hell doesn't know who Iron Man is? Or the Hulk?
No, I'm not arguing that point. Well, but if you can define for me the plot of the Avengers in classic movie structure, I will give you one shiny nickel.
Well,
wow, give me a month and I'll get back with you.
Also, there's the exception that they set the Avengers up over the course of about a half dozen movies prior to it.
Yeah, and then that is a whole other podcast. But I drew upon the Avengers because it's because it's a very recent movie, and it's one that half the world saw, and it's an example of it's a great contrast to a movie like Alien. Where you have the slow burn, you have this introduction of a universe, you're introduced to all these different characters, and even as the alien is introduced and doing its thing and starting to kill people, the movie takes time to breathe. I say this a lot on this show, and it's one that I keep coming back to. One people don't necessarily think about in these terms, but 8 Mile with Eminem is one of those rare modern movies where they would actually let the camera sit still for a moment on the actor's face, and the movie had time to breathe and let the audience sort of take things in, and it wasn't going 100 miles an hour. The Avengers was the exact opposite. Everything was going fast. You didn't have time to think about how none of this made any sense. It was, pretty colors, stuff was happening. Woo! It was an event. It's to me again, it's character development. In Alien, I cared about Parker. I cared what happened to him. I cared about Lambert. What happened to Lambert in Dallas? All these people, because we were able to build. They built the characters up. You cared when the monster killed them. In the Avengers, would anybody have really given a shit if Hawkeye would have gotten a laser blast to the face?
God, no.
No, there was no character development with Hawkeye whatsoever.
Well, no, he spent half of it being a zombie, so an even better example of it. Would have anyone cared if Scarlett Johansson and her red hair and boobs got shot in the face? Nope, not really. Other than,
I would have.
There would have been a lack of boobs in the movie.
I would have.
Yes, Sean. Do you now want to take this podcast on the Scarlett Johansson defense direction?
You said boobs. Okay,
Just
give him a time. Give him a minute to relax.
I'm just saying I would have cared.
Okay.
Because red hair boobs. Don't judge me.
Duly noted. So let's talk about the plot of this thing. So you have this crew, and feel free to kind of jump in if I'm missing an element or two. I tend to be a little sketch on plots at times, but essentially you've got this spaceship carrying ores back from some planet or other, and they get a distress call, and they go and they check out what the distress call is, and then there's a ship that's been grounded on another planet, a planet that in the next movie will be known as, I think, LV-24601 from Les Miserables. So they go and they check out this grounded spaceship which sent out a distress call. And that's important to know, that they did not land necessarily, they did not find all the stuff on the planet somewhere. They found it in a spaceship. Okay. So they go in the spaceship.
You left out Sigourney Weaver in her underpants. That's an important part to the beginning of the movie.
So Sigourney Weaver in her underwear is most of these movies. It was as if the studio said, "Look, we got to have Sigourney Weaver in her underpants, and no one's going to watch this shit." Anyway, so they go, they check, they send out, Kirk and Spock leave the ship, and they check out the ship, and they see a bunch of eggs, and they're inspecting, and one of the eggs pops open, and it jumps on John Hurt's face, and they take him back, and they try to get it off. The thing's made of acid, can't get it off of him, so they just leave it there, and eventually the thing falls off and dies. The next thing that happens is they're having Christmas dinner, and there's the saying, "Pass me the yams." And in the middle of passing the yams, John Hurt starts to have what appears to be something across between food poisoning and a stroke. And we have the famous chestbuster scene. He lays on his back, they shove a spoon in his mouth, and suddenly, boof, lops the dinner, right? And everyone freaks out as this thing starts to sing, "Hello, my baby, hello, my honey." So it jumps out of his chest and makes a run for it. And over the course of...
let me, if I may interrupt with the chest-busting scene,
yes.
People, they had an idea because they read the script what was going to happen, but they didn't know what was going to happen with the explosion and the blood being splattered. So everybody's reaction to the chest bust was natural shock.
That's awesome. Yeah. Sometimes in pro wrestling, they won't tell the announcers what's going on or what's going to happen, so they can have like a natural reaction, and that's always the best fun. When half the people have no idea what's going on and have to actually act like human beings. So he's dead after having his entire chest, obliterated. This thing jumps out and proceeds to grow at an exponential rate, and one by one, it's feeding on the crew. Now, Sean, just explain something to me. The aliens feed on the people, but then they also drag them to be cocooned for more xenomorphs. Could you explain to me the life cycle of these xenomorph things? Because as I'm sitting here watching these movies, I'm like, this is the most, you talk about natural development of a species. This is the oddest way to procreate. Let's think about this. We have a queen who lays an egg, right? The thing hatches, and out pops one organism, who then has to find a host and drop in the xenomorph. Then the xenomorph pops out, and he has, I guess, two functions: to feed and to drag more hosts for more face huggers. Seems a little. I don't know. Explain that one to me.
There's not really all that much to explain. It is an apex fucking predator. To borrow one of my favorite lines from Nash, like Jet Li, it has the power to pretty much kill anything and everything that it comes across. It is exactly as described. You have the queen alien, which lays the eggs. You have, which then hatch the facehuggers, which then lay the eggs inside their targets, which then hatch and burst out of the chest. which then grew into the full-fledged xenomorphs of whatever form they might happen to be coated with from that egg.
Yeah, but what if you have no hosts? I mean, you have to imagine these things come from a planet of some sort, right? And maybe I don't want to get into Prometheus, but let's assume there was.
But you did inevitably try to meander right into Prometheus, because that was the problem. Was Ridley then tried to explain it even further, and it just got progressively less and less interesting. Really, as we've established so many times on this show when we've talked about other scary movies, it's almost scarier because you can't necessarily suss out a rational motivation. Like I said, it has no other natural occurring predator that really hunts it. It has one objective: make more. Kill whatever is standing in its way and make more. That's it. Those are its only instincts. It doesn't care about anything else. It doesn't care about conquering and procuring mineral wealth for its own advantage. It doesn't care about extending land boundaries. You can't even really say that it cares about the survival of its species. It's just doing exactly what comes naturally to it. And that's the most terrifying thing of all, is you can't really distract it with any other motivation. If you put something else in front of it, that's just something else that it's going to kill. Inevitably, it's going to get back around to you.
So, keeping with you for a second and further trying to educate me on this film, here we have a situation where the Weyland-Yutani Corporation sent these people out to go get mineral ores. They followed a protocol that when they picked up a distress signal, went to check it out. Now, unless the Weyland-Yutani Corporation had all kinds of chaotic evil powers, it had no idea they were going to do that, to my knowledge.
Watch the entire movie?
Well, no, that's what I'm getting to. You have this whole subplot here where Ash, allows John Hurt with the facehugger to come back on the ship. It gets messages from the corporation. The crew is expendable. Make sure you save this alien. So, what am I missing here? Did they get set up from the get-go with this thing, or was it all just a happy accident?
Well, more or less, because what happened was, yes, while they were in cryo, they ended up being rerouted. They were rerouted to the crash site to answer the distress call. And as it's revealed later on, from pretty close to the get-go, Ash was in on it the entire time, because as a synthoid, he was getting his directions from the computer, from Weyland-Yutani, and he had to obey them. And
so what you're telling me is what you're telling me is Weyland-Yutani knew there was some sort of crazy apex predator xenomorph out there. Go get it.
They were given some indication of it. Yeah, that was who they were getting their directives from. And if you'll note later, once Ripley finally manages to hack through all the security measures and everything, that's pretty much exactly what it tells her. Is everything else becomes secondary. You were to extract this life form, bring it back, and absolutely everything else, the crew's lives included, has become a secondary concern. And that's the point when Ash notices that Ripley has figured things out and decides that it's time for him to play cleanup crew.
Does that not strike you as somewhat of a flaw in the plot? I mean, let's go back. They sent out a crew to pick up ore. You know, if I'm the U.S. military and I want some crazy bioweapon, I'm not sending my friend Ken the trucker to go get it.
Well, it's not that they were. I mean, they were the closest people. The Nostromo was the closest vehicle to this planet. That's why they were rerouted there. So while the crew of the Nostromo was asleep for God knows how long, I'm not sure. I don't remember how long they were asleep. The company found out that this alien that they wanted was on this planet, or something was there that they wanted investigated, and they woke everybody up. So they didn't send the trucking crew.
And see, and here's my thing about this, though. Here is where you do come up with a plot hole. You knew enough about this thing to know that you wanted to send somebody out there to go get it. You knew at least that much. The Cajun fried fuck was your end game once you got this thing back on Earth. The fuck of any utility whatsoever were you hoping to get from this? Just general knowledge? Is that what you're going for? Just get the thing back and learn about it? Were you hoping there was going to be a Jeopardy question about it at some point?
Well, but
about this whole
you're assuming that they've already run into aliens. I don't think that they had yet. So they got an extraterrestrial signal, and they wanted whatever it was.
I guess that's the problem I have with this is as a minor subplot where you can have a big swerve and one of your leads is turned out to be a double agent, and all of that, it's fine, especially if you don't think too much about it. But because they expanded on this universe and they made the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, the not alien villain of the next movie and the one after that, I mean, this has been a singular pursuit of this company. And much like we talked about with the Terminator franchise, where I'm more curious as to why he comes back from Los Angeles to New York and how he got suspended and why him and his wife just can't seem to make things work. I'm more interested in how the fuck this company knew anything about this alien at all, that it became their big obsession for over 200 years.
Hooray! We got the Murder Beast 3000 back on Earth! Now what?
I mean, Jason, I'm going to let you sort of sort this all out for me. But this is my biggest problem with this. And look, I'm not picking too much on it. Alien, for what it is a great movie that unfortunately does not stand up over time. I mean, I think people can watch it today and appreciate it for what it was. But it's certainly one of those movies where you look at it and go, yup, it's 1979 for sure. But if you start to
are you kidding? I just watched it. Rewatched it a couple of months ago. And no, I thought the only thing that didn't hold up is the computer equipment.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
I mean, it looked like Matthew Broderick's bedroom in War Games.
Shall we play a game?
Right, but other than that, I thought it held up pretty well.
But I think but for a couple of old fogies and for moviegoers, sure. I'm not saying that we don't appreciate it 30 years later. I'm saying, your kids, my kids, if we, when they become of age to be able to watch these things and go, it's kind of like putting them in front of the old, in front of Star Wars, where they're kind of looking at this thing going like, who the fuck shot this thing? Was it in their backyard? It's
or let's bring it up. Let's bring it up to the Matrix. I talked to some of my college students about the Matrix when I'm talking about movies, and they're like, yeah, so what's the big deal? Like, okay, if you would have watched it in 1999, you would have known what the big deal was. Right. But, I mean, all of the special effects that made it so beautiful they're just so overused. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Terminator 2 has, for the first time unveils the liquid effect, and it's the greatest thing in CGI history. Now you see that thing on The Big Bang Theory. I mean, it's who the fuck cares anymore? That's what I mean by it. It's hard to hold these things up over time just because movie technology has become so far advanced. Unless you're George Lucas, in which case you still can't use it right. In any case, you'll notice on this show I do a lot.
Don't get me started on George Lucas. Please don't get me started on Lucas.
You'll notice I do a lot of snarky tangents on this show, but if you start to, and I want to transition into aliens here, but I just feel like there are some, if you think too hard about them and you don't allow yourself to just enjoy the simple slasher flick that it is, there's some problems here with the plot and some of the inner workings of the Alien movie. Last word on this. We're going to move on. Go ahead.
No, you know what? Actually, the one thing that I mentioned, admittedly, mostly jokingly, no, actually, I think that especially the first two are fairly tightly written stories, and I think that's one of the reasons why they work, is because the whole thing is just kept so damn simple, and part of it has to do a lot with not so much developing an intricate story, but like Jason said, it's in the character. The these are big sci-fi character pieces in that you don't necessarily even like every character. But
I hated the other woman. I absolutely hated the other woman character in this.
Okay, but that's the thing, though, is you're at least given time with them enough and pacing enough to have a reason to feel whatever you feel about each character.
As a writer, if people are indifferent to your characters, you've failed. If they love them or hate them, you've nailed it.
Exactly. But even better, more importantly, what they did is the first two movies especially do something that the third movie didn't. And I like to say that the third movie doesn't multitask very well. Because in the first and second movies, they're evenly paced enough that you're able to learn something about each of the characters. Even if it's something to throw you off a little bit, like with Paul Reiser in Aliens, but you're able to learn enough to be invested in them while everything else is going on. 3 grinds so much to a halt for exposition dumps and sometimes just utterly out-and-out pointless dialogue that really nothing happens. Nothing happens. It is like 2.5 hours of the first season of The fucking Walking Dead is what it is. There's an alien on board the penal colony. Let's all have a good chat about it. And every so often, every few minutes, Bitey will pop up to bite people. That's about it. The other movies, no, we're shown things through the way people react, through their interactions with one another.
Okay, real quick, Sean. I'm not debating any of that, and I said structurally all that stuff is absolutely true. If you focus on what is shown in this movie and what it's about and what it's trying to do, you're right. It's pretty flawless. You could criticize it in as far as it's very much a movie of its time, 1979 versus 2014. But again, we've kind of beat that to death now. I'm not arguing that point. I'm saying there were elements in this movie that are introduced or at least alluded to that are not followed up on, and I guess that's the question, isn't it? Can you throw stuff out in a movie that I'm now saying that if you think too much about this, it doesn't make any goddamn sense? Is it okay to do that, especially if it isn't the focus of your movie? If it's just like, look, the company wanted it, shut up, stop asking questions, Radulich. Is it okay to do that, Jason?
Well, I mean, obviously, since it makes so much goddamn money. But, really, no. You want to keep some sort of consistency. But to me, the Alien and Aliens, it's a loose. The movies are a loose connection to me because they're so freaking wildly different from each other. I mean, because as you mentioned, the first one's a horror movie. Hell yes, I don't really consider it, that much of a science fiction movie. First, it's a horror movie. First, a bunch of kids are driving their car and they stop at the cabin in the woods, and something follows them home and starts killing them very, very slowly. It's a suspenseful movie. When you've got all these just everyday people, when they finally, when they build the motion detector and they know when it's coming towards them closer and closer, faster and faster, and they're using these makeshift, torches that they had to shit together because they're not a military crew. That's really intense stuff. And then you get to Aliens, and it's just an action movie.
Oh, it's so much more than an action movie. It's a comedy.
Oh.
It's a love story. It's a movie about family. It's everything. It's the greatest movie ever made.
And it also has the one actor who was killed by an alien, a predator, and the Terminator.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So,
now here's a question, though. Here's what it kind of comes back to when it comes to relative to the story. Suppose they did reveal why Weyland-Yutani actually wanted this thing back, just to address just one of the supposed plot holes.
Okay, how about how they knew it was there in the first place? But go on.
Okay. here's your question about it. The whole crux of the movie is supposed to be about how the crew is going to survive and getting the alien on the ship in a logical way. If you knew the other things, what realistic fucking difference would it make to anything else that you've seen to know any of that stuff? Or would it just be unnecessary additional information that really ultimately doesn't change anything?
Well, that's why I asked. I said, is it okay to introduce any of that stuff but not really follow it up or give any more explanation? You're just sort of told accept it.
Yeah, and you know what? Think of it. And again, I'm saying this despite being the guy who was joking around by bringing up what the hell was their end game to getting the alien back anyway. That's ultimately kind of my somewhat sarcastic way of actually flat out pointing out that, yes, you can introduce this stuff and not really elaborate on it, because elaborating on it wouldn't really advance the main goal of the movie in any significant way anyway. It's there for maybe a little bit of color and to give a general explanation, but dig into it too far, and, it's like if I spend all day writing a 500-word article for a client that I could have had done in 45 minutes, but instead I end up spending 6 fucking hours on it simply because I can't decide on the placement of a comma.
I think it's a little bit more than that, considering they could have simplified it by simply saying the android wanted it. The android thought this was a good idea.
Here's where I sit on this is I don't think that the company knew that it was an alien. Here, my take on this is that while the crew of the ship was asleep, the company was like, oh shit, we've detected a signal from this planet, and you know what? It's not ours. Let's send somebody to go see what it is. And then Ash is the one who says, calls the company because he's the double agent saying, oh shit, hey guys, this kind of popped out of an egg. Do you want me to bring it home? And they're like, sure.
Yeah,
because they haven't, well, yeah, absolutely, because they haven't experienced extraterrestrials yet.
So to Sean's point, if they had at least added one scene where that's happening, where Ash sort of goes off to the side, or a reveal of some sort, where it's like, while you were sleeping, they don't have to make it that over dramatic and sort of cartoon.
Yeah, no monologuing.
Yeah, so you see, Sigourney Weaver, my master plan was, like a James Bond villain. So here was my accomplice, Goldfinger. They don't need to do that, but just one scene that sort of make that connection for me is all I would have asked. Other than that, it's a perfectly fine slasher movie. All right, so it's 1986. I'm 10 years old, and my father says, stop being a pussy. We go see Aliens, and this thing rocks. Oh, my goodness. As people have heard on Long Road to Ruin before, I have an issue where a studio, they got a hit on their hands. They have a property, they have a thing, and they go, okay, we want to make more movies with this thing because this thing draws money. Okay, well, that's perfectly acceptable. I don't have a major problem with that, and I just wish they'd do it better. And, and you say, okay, let's bring some artists in the room and let's talk about how we're going to do another movie with this thing. And they come up with these great ideas, and the studio goes, nah, let's just put more stuff in it, okay? More things. You know that thing that's really popular? We can put it on T-shirts and we can put it on hats and baby diapers and we can make toys out of it and it's really great and video games and all that shit. Yeah, more of that. And so what do we say? More dinosaurs. Yes, folks, because everybody needs a catchphrase. So no, and they did. But this is one of those circumstances where the more dinosaurs effect actually works. Aliens, I think, works really, really well because of the fact that they took this little universe and blew it up. Okay, now we've got a queen. We've got an army of these things. They've taken out a colony. They're fucking everywhere. And you introduce this unit of badass killer Marines who are summarily wiped the fuck out. Because
badass killer Marines and Bill Paxton.
Who is awesome in this movie. I could do the next hour of just his lines. I think they're hilarious. Like half my promotion for this podcast was his lines. But so I one of the things I love about this was James Cameron should really be applauded for his ability to juggle the more dinosaurs thing with still character development, a pretty tight plot. Obviously it looks great. It's just a great movie. Unfortunately, it's when you if you just watched the movie and never saw it again, you would come away with a lot of the praise that I'm giving it. When you start to realize this movie could have been so much more, when you watch like the deleted scenes, and that's we're going to spend some time talking about that. When you look at the director's cut of this thing, and you realize that there's a whole side of Ripley that James Cameron sought to explore that the studio opted to kick out of the movie, you're like, oh, wow, talk about unrealized potential. Just want to get your initial thoughts on sort of my interpretation of the more dinosaurs and just the bigger, badder, better approach to making the Alien sequel, Jason.
Well, I mean, they had to do something different than the first movie. So again, they went from a horror movie to an action movie because those were great. Come on, 1986. That's a big time for action movies. And throw a good cast together and throw as many aliens as you possibly can at them. Which, I mean, again, it worked. I don't think they could have played it Ripley going after one alien again. People wouldn't have sat through that. They wanted to see, bigger explosions. So, yeah, I agree. It needs to be done. And this is James Cameron's third best movie.
Fair enough. Sean, your initial...
Terminator and Terminator 2 being the first two.
Agreed. Sean, your sort of initial reactions to aliens and more dinosaurs and such.
You know what? You're absolutely right. It worked because it kept around what was my favorite part of Alien, and that was the fact that it gave you some time with the characters. Most importantly, it started something that unfortunately really stopped dead with Alien 3 and could have made Alien 3 so much better. And that is, we really got to see the evolution of Ripley. In the first movie, all she was just the second in command on the ship who just had to try to pull everything together as best she could, try to keep her head together as best she could, and ultimately, this was not Mila Jovovich in Resident Evil. Okay? She did not end the movie going spin-kicking around the Nostromo, throwing drop kicks at the goddamn xenomorph, all with a steely, murderous gaze in her eyes. No. As she would be expected to be, she was fucking goddamn shit herself terrified. In this movie, she starts it off already scarred by this thing. And you've got to chalk this up to her stage experience. Really knowing how to bring out just being very haunted by what's happened. And the fact that nobody else will seemingly take responsibility for it. And being pretty much a combination of abjectly horrified when she finds out that there's a colony that's still probably under siege by this thing on LV-426, but at the same time saying, fuck that noise, you made this mess, you clean it up. And then ultimately, by the end of it, she's forced kind of to accept this heroine's role, and this kind of, in a way, a kind of interesting, tender second chance of being a mother by having to look after Newt in all of this. Seemingly doing everything, every scene with Newt seems so natural for her character. Like, there's just, it's the only thing she would know to do. To the point that when Newt's in danger at the end of it, what does it get Ripley in a walking loader and get away from her, you bitch. just absolutely ready to throw down. But in addition to that, we get a chance to get to know Reiser a little bit. At least enough that he kind of lulls us into a false sense of security. That maybe he really is just kind of an innocent that's just kind of caught up in this whole thing. We get to know, I know I'm going to get the names mixed up here.
What's his face from Terminator 2? Michael Biehn, who pretty good action hero who probably should have gotten more than he did, but instead in this movie, of course, he was upstaged by Bishop. And let me tell you, if the world ever comes down to the point where those are the kind of hands that our fate is in, fuck it, kids. I'm grabbing the suicide pills before any of you get your hands on them. I am going to be all of the dead before it comes down to that. We get to know Lance Henriksen as Bishop a little bit. And I kind of want to know, Jason, did you catch the little Isaac Asimov reference? With Bishop?
Well, you know what, and I don't remember, did he say anything about not being programmed to hurt people?
Exactly, and I hope I've got the author right, because I keep being afraid that maybe I've got the wrong.
It was Asimov. It was one of his the robots. The whatever list of rules he had for them. Yeah.
One of the laws of robotics, and at one point after he just nicked his finger playing five-finger fillet with Bishop and proceeding to make him probably have different kinds of shit in his pants. Ripley is they're kind of vague explaining what happened with Ash and the Nostromo and all that. And Bishop inquires as to what model it was, and he says, "Well, that explains it. They were always a little bit twitchy. That could never happen. That could never happen with my personality inhibitor or whatever. I am unable either by action or by omission of action to allow harm to come to another human being." I never noticed that until this time when I watched the movie. I thought that was kind of clever. I really liked that. But what I'm kind of trying to get at here is, yes, the stakes are raised kind of the same way they were in Die Hard 2. Is, on the one side, on the protagonist side, yes, you've got more firepower. But on the other hand, you're also dealing with more of the enemy than ever before. What this movie did that Die Hard 2 didn't was, in addition to raising the stakes, it also raised the investment in the people throughout the movie. With the exception of Newt, I was always kind of sorry that Newt never got her irritating little head bitten off. That stupid, inconsistent accent of hers.
They're dead. All right, can we go now? How did you not love that line?
Just, kid, pick an accent and stick with it. But and it worked for that. It worked for that reason, and also every time you set something up, it wasn't just kind of endless running throughout the movie or endless shooting. In between the running and in between the shooting, there was established a clear objective each time. It was kind of like stages in a video game. We're given some time to kind of understand why things matter. Everything was shot in a way that you could see what was going on, and you were given a sense of progression, especially in that first.
Right, you're not watching one scene of people being mauled after one after another. I think about the movie I think it's Viper or Python or something with whatever the snake movie was with Ice Cube. Anaconda. And it's just it's kind of the kind of thing that I've heard you and Robert talk about, and you and I and Robert all talked about when we were discussing horror movies, and that is, you set up just a group of fodder for the monster to just chew up one scene after another, and some take it slow, some take it fast, and the ones that take it fast, it's just one scene after another of someone being mauled, and in some cases with so much like shaky cam and cutaways that you can't even get a clear picture as to what's happening here. It's just, all right, someone got mauled. Next, and it's just it's just a feeding system until you get to whatever the conclusion is, where the only person that could ever stand a chance of fighting this thing is the hero, or your main star, or your survivor, or whatever. I want to talk a little bit about the plot here, and then we're going to start to dissect this thing a little bit. So, Ripley has been on in stasis for 57 years, which, to one degree or another, is sort of glossed over in the theatrical cut, and in the director's cut, from what I saw in the deleted scenes, is made much more of a bigger deal in that, she has a daughter who was 10 when she went away on the Nostromo, and she has now missed her entire life, and the daughter has died, of natural causes as an older woman. Ripley has missed out on an entire life. She is now a person out of time. And as Sean talked about, he has been traumatized by the experience on the Nostromo, and so she is having nightmares. When she comes back, she is made a laughingstock as she is given a report to the Weyland-Yutani Company, who essentially don't believe her, which I don't want to start talking about now, but it is one of the things I got very hung up on. It's, it's on the one hand, you sent the Nostromo after the stupid thing, and then you sent the colony there, and you may have sent them to their doom for the sole purpose of dealing with this alien thing. And then when this woman comes back to talk about it, you're like, burn her, she's a witch. We have no idea what you're talking about, lady. Shut up. And then we want you to go after them anyway. It's like, well, you were the most schizophrenic company I've ever seen. In any case, Paul Reiser is the contact for the company, and he is trying to engage Ripley to go back to LV-426, which is now a colony that is gone to the same planet as where they last found the ship with the eggs on it. And they've lost contact with the colony, and so they're going to send them with a Marine detachment to go inspect and see what's going on. In the director's cut, there's actually a flashback scene to where the colony is alive and well, and they show you Newt and her family, and they kind of bring you up to the point where they have the first contact with the ship, with the eggs in it and all of the xenomorphs. And so all of the stuff that you're introduced to when the Marines get to LV-426, which has been destroyed and mucked over and made gooey, you get to see it when it was functional. And there were people there, and who was eating the donut that you see in the opening scene when they get there and all of that. You got to see the live functional colony, and I think whether it was cut for time or the studio was like, just fucking get to the aliens already. It really irks me that they cut that out of the movie. Because I always felt like, even as a kid watching it, they get there and it's just everything is dead. And I don't have any kind of attachment to this thing. Like, you have no clue what they're going to find there other than aliens. You know you're going to find that there. So it's just kind of, you're just waiting for that first scene where the aliens will strike. And I feel like they could have made you, the audience, more attached to what was going on there if they had at least shown you a live colony and shown you how everything sort of fell apart there. But moving on. So Ripley at first says, forget it, I'm not going back. And she continues to have nightmares. And she says, well, the only way I'm going to deal with this thing is to face it head on. So, Paul Reiser convinces her they're not trying to seek out bioweapons. They're really just going to find the colonists, destroy whatever the aliens they find, and no one's going to be betrayed this time, for real. No lying. So they go. And the Marines get there. They realize that they can't use their weapons, which produces one of the funniest lines of the movie. What do you mean we got to give up our weapons? What are we supposed to use? Harsh language? I still laugh every time I hear that. So now they are made even less lethal than they had been before. They realize that the aliens are all around them, and then it's just one thing after another. It's not only are they surrounded by aliens, but then they find out that their reactor on the thing is going to blow up. So they got to get off the planet because essentially they're sitting on a nuclear bomb. And I forget what then something else happens where they got to get out of there really quickly. And along the way, you find out that Paul Reiser is actually trying to bring back an alien, so he turns out to be a double dealer and a liar. And it just sort of progresses from there. And then there's a big climactic scene where it's Ripley versus the Queen over Newt's body on a pole held above the ring next to a belt. And that is Aliens. So I've talked a little bit, Jason, about how they don't deal with Ripley's dead daughter and they don't deal with the colony. And I feel like that's mostly what I'm talking about when I say missed opportunities and, a film that had more potential than we knew about and failed to realize that potential because of those missing bits. What would you say to that?
Oh, well, it goes back to what I was talking about before about characters and about, feelings, about making the audience feel something one way or another for a character. And by cutting those parts out, I mean, the part about showing the colonists, being all nice and happy and Newt with her family, that is some serious, okay, hey, look at these nice, happy people. Oh, fuck, this is what the aliens did. That stirs up emotions. It stirs up more emotions when you do that. When they did the deal with Ripley's daughter, it gives more depth to the Ripley character that we didn't have before. So that's a disservice to the movie. Absolutely agreed. Something that you talked about with Alien about plot holes. One major one with this movie that has always bugged me. I don't care about Ripley's dreams one iota. This is the future. You can figure out some way to take. I'm sure psychoanalysis has gone a little bit above what we have now.
You mean throwing darts at a dartboard?
Excuse me?
You mean psychoanalysis? You mean throwing darts at a dartboard and whatever medication you land on, that's the one we give you?
Yeah, she would at least have forgotten her dreams. No, but the point is, the movie shouldn't have happened with her. She should have been in there for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Hey, Ellen, you remember that planet with the monsters on it? We're going back. Would you like to go? Fuck that. There, it's over. Her part's over.
No.
What, you're sending the Marines? Why do you need me? The Marines are going to do a great job. Just have them send me a postcard.
And she says all of that. She says, why am I even
I know
here?
she does, but then she ends up going. And who convinces her to go? Paul Reiser. Who likes Paul Reiser? Nobody likes Paul Reiser. What the hell was the show that he was in with Helen Hunt?
Mad About You.
It was Mad at You. It was Mad at Paul Reiser.
One night, and they actually did a thing where it was Mad About You Aliens, which I almost played at the top of the show. I decided I just want to get into this because I knew we were going to have you on, and I just want to start talking about the movies. But I love that he's in bed with the aliens. He's like, why do you always have to when we're in bed? What's that all about? Mad About You Aliens?
Yeah. The best thing about the movie was when he got killed. I hate Paul Reiser that much.
Somewhere out there, Pat Mullen is mourning the death of one of my two dads. But please continue.
Something else that you mentioned that is something that bugged me in the movie, about giving up the guns. Lieutenant Gorman. I absolutely hated that character because it was a complete stereotype. Let's throw this lieutenant. He's going to be in command of these Marines, but he's never been in battle. He's never faced adversity whatsoever. But what the hell? Let's send him in anyway. So I hate James stereotypes, Cameron, and he was one.
Well, I was going to say James Cameron, as we know from Avatar and many other movies that he does, likes to put his politics right out there in the movies, and he was definitely saying something about the military and the whole concept of like the career military people with absolutely no combat experience and that sort of thing, and he's not as bad as say Spielberg or Lucas, where it's so ham-handed it just takes you right out of the movie, but it's there with Cameron.
But how many times did we see that character in the TV show MASH over its 10-year run?
Right.
A lot. I mean, I'm getting more of it. It's a stereotype.
Sure. As is the military person who refuses to listen to reason and wants to nuke everything. That's in every, that's in every military movie.
Right.
I have this plan. We're going to hack the alien vessel with my Apple computer. No, we have to nuke everything. Don't you understand? That's a different movie. Sean.
Yes.
So we have this unrealized potential where we don't get to really see this others. I mean, you talked about the problem with Ripley and Newt is without the context of her having lost her daughter, without that being shown in the movie. Yes, it seems that that Ripley is sort of showing you this other side of herself, but it also feels almost tacked on. Like because they don't show you any other context, you're almost asking yourself, where is this coming from? Why does she care about this kid? She has these mothering instincts. Well, this is the first. Granted, it's the only time she's ever been able to show it, but still, and this is why I'm asking you this question. I feel like the studio's vision of this thing is, and they've actually said this in some of the research that I was looking at, is that the reason why they're so bent on having the Ripley in these movies is they feel like she's a strong warrior character, and that's all they really see her as. So when you have the writers and James Cameron, who's the director, sort of showing her as a mother, and as this feeling character, and she's not a warrior, it's in stark contrast to what the studio saw and what the studio wanted out of her, which is essentially they wanted her to be Lara Croft.
Yeah, and in this case, Cameron was right and studio was wrong.
But the unfortunate problem with that is you have only half an idea. Then you have James Cameron's half of the idea with Newt, without the other half of exploring the stuff with the daughter, which I think takes away from the movie just a little bit.
I guess I'm not seeing where you feel like it takes away from, because I mean all the other stuff that got cut out in the director's cut. To be perfectly honest with you, the problem is if you had left that in, Aliens as it is a 2.5-hour movie. If you start leaving too much character development of things that really, for the sake of a movie and for the sake of the pacing concerns, really don't need to necessarily be developed, you really start to develop something that's overly long and doesn't have to be, because it's spending time on stuff that ultimately the audience probably isn't going to care that much about.
Well, hang on. Here's where I disagree with you. If you're telling me, if you watch that movie and there aren't scenes having to do with the military that you don't think they can cut, the whole drop onto the planet, I'm sitting there and I'm like, what is the point of showing this? Dropping onto planets is hard? I mean, there was a lot of stuff they showed getting to the planet where I was like, why is this even in the film?
But that would have cut out the line, express elevator to hell, going down.
They're going down. Yeah, true.
Well, gee, you're just going to be a bucket of kittens to talk to when we get to talking about the chopper scene in Predator.
Well, one movie at a time. My point is, you're sitting here and you're saying to me, okay, 2.5 hours, you got to cut something, Radulich. What do you cut? I say cut the bullshit with the military, says the conservative. I say cut the bullshit with the military. Show me more of Ripley and her daughter. Show me more of the colonists. Show me the stuff that matters to me, to the plot, not this horse shit where we get to see, look, it's military men doing military stuff.
Well, but that's where you have to strike kind of a little bit of a balance, because you're not going to be spending the rest of the movie with Collins. You're not going to be spending the rest of the movie with Ripley's daughter. You can kind of establish those things in other ways, maybe not in quite as direct a manner, but in at least some manner, something being better than nothing. That is still going to give you time, on the other hand, to invest some time with the Marines, who you're going to be seeing a lot of for the next couple hours, depending on which one we're talking about and how long they're set to make it through the movie.
They kill half the
and Private Vasquez's tits.
I'm sorry?
He said, and Private Vasquez's tits, which reminds me of the line.
Yeah,
They saw you said illegal alien and signed right up anytime, anywhere.
Hey, I could have done with a little more time with Private Vasquez and her guns.
they kill almost the entire regiment in the first encounter with the aliens. Okay? Mm-hmm. The harsh language didn't work, as you may have guessed, and they kill almost every single one of those people. So, and then they kill the two on the plane. Spunkmeyer. Spunkmeyer. Well, what the hell? I'll tell you, those Marines died great in that movie. Some great deaths. Spunkmeyer. Spunkmeyer and Ferro die almost, die in the next scene, and then all you're really left with is Vasquez, the Gorman, Hicks, and Bill Paxton. Yeah, who is Bill Paxton's character? Hudson.
Yeah.
So I mean, so I say to you again, and I don't want to belabor the argument. So I'm going to give you the final word on this, and then we're going to move on. But when they kill almost every single one of the Marines except for the ones I just mentioned, Vasquez, Hicks, Hudson, and Gorman, why do you need to spend so much time with all of these Marines? They're all going to die in pretty much a 20-minute sequence. Why not more of... But you're going to spend about an hour and a half of this movie with Ripley and Newt. So why not spend more time establishing that she lost her family in a 57-year sleep?
It's a tricky balance. I mean, on the other hand, you got to spend some time with them. Otherwise, we end up with the problem we talked about just a little bit ago, and we see with so many other... Well, with Anaconda, for example. If you don't spend at least some time with the Marines establishing personality, giving them a few lines here and there, giving a little something to maybe lighten the mood a little bit, well, everybody just becomes Owen Wilson, Ice Cube, and John Voight. And Corey Warner.
God. That sounds like my hell.
Well, so, I mean, I get where you're coming from, and... I'm not going to pull a Jeff here and get all relentlessly argumentative about it and try to nitpick at it.
You're not going to repeat the same line over and over and over again until I submit?
I'm not going to be a scrawny, retarded man-child is what I'm saying. Hey, 411's in my rear view. I will say what the fuck I want, who the fuck I want to say it about.
Nice.
But... no, I get where you're coming from. Unlike him, I will say that I respectfully get your point, and it's a very valid one. But at the same time, the one thing about movies is at some point you can only pad them out so long before it does start to become a zero-sum game. You can take a story like Lord of the Rings and you can kind of extend it out into a 4-hour edition that somehow is miraculously still amazingly beautiful to watch and enjoyable every single time you see it. On the other hand, a movie like Aliens, you can kind of extend it out so much and still maintain kind of the desperation and the tension of the story. But then after that, okay, then like any good writer, you've got to murder some of your darlings. You've got to kill them off. No matter how much you may love that sentence or you may love that clause or love that metaphor, and God knows I have had enough journalism instructors who have tried to get me to do it, you have to cut something for the sake of keeping it readable, for the sake of keeping the audience engaged in it. And, if you go so far up to a certain point of just focusing on mourning the loss of Ripley's daughter, who we never meet, and is never even mentioned until this movie, at some point, you're also going to lose everybody else who's kind of there to see the action, too. So, it's tricky. It's an imperfect balance, and to each their own, but quite frankly, I think Aliens did its job just fine. So.
Okay. Jason, I'm going to let you have the last word on Aliens. Any burning desires, things untalked about, something that we missed in the discussion as I focus on these other elements. Let you do that in 50 words or less, and then we're going to move on to Sean's favorite topic, Alien 3.
Okay, I thought his favorite topic was Alien Resurrection, but I'm sorry I brought that up. No, one of the things about Ripley's daughter, I really didn't give a shit. I really didn't care. It was never mentioned, never touched on a bit in the first movie. They made it up for the second movie and left most of it out. And I didn't care, and I don't think I would have cared more by seeing something more in depth.
All right, this has been the long road to ruin. Good night, everybody. God, no, sorry. Go ahead.
That's what I already knew Ripley's character, and that's all I really felt I needed to know. I wanted to get to know the other characters a little bit more. It would have been nice to know. I mean, I would have rather seen the colonists a little bit, nothing very long, just something brief to show them, being happy-go-lucky and Newt with her family, to get me to feel something a little bit more about Newt, because she came off as pretty annoying. There. Newt was annoying.
Aww.
I'm finished.
Did we care that they killed the queen the same way they killed the first alien by blowing it out the fucking airlock? Sean, do we care, or it was fun to hit the same note second time around?
You know what? It was a well-executed scene. It was just fine, and it wasn't exactly the same in that, as opposed to it just being Ripley surviving, there was also a little struggle to keep what was left of Bishop on board, to keep Newt safe. So there was a little bit more. There was a little bit more at stake there. So quite frankly, I was okay with it. I was fine with the way it ended.
On Facebook, I made the last thing, and then we're going to move on. I made the joke about this was the original Pacific Rim, because you had a human manning a robot power suit fighting a giant monster. Get it? Ripley's in the power loader. The power loader is the Geiger, or Giger, or whatever the fuck those things were called, right? And the giant monster, you see, was the Xenomorph Queen. Get it, Dad? Pacific Rim. Fuck, it's not that hard. Sorry. My father didn't get the joke when I put it on Facebook, and then he wanted to argue with me that Pacific Rim and Aliens were nothing alike, which I understand that. But loader, Geiger, monsters, Xenoform, fuck. Jason knows what I'm talking about, right, Jason?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I really was I'm not going to talk about Pacific Rim.
There was nothing bad to say about Pacific Rim. It was giant robots punching giant monsters in the face. Perfect. I was expecting to see Ultraman. That's what I wanted to see, and that's not quite what I got. When they pulled the sword out and cut the monster's head off or whatever, I wanted the arms and legs of the Geiger to turn into lions. That's what I really wanted to see at that point in the movie. But that's a whole other podcast. All right, Alien 3. God bless it. So, Alien 3... I love how we're talking about Alien, and you bring up a monster called a Geiger. Yeah, you know what I should have started this podcast with was something from the Dead Kennedys album that the Giger painting was put in. Do you guys know about that? H.R. Giger.
Which album?
Oh, Jesus, I want to say it was Not Too Drunk to Fuck, but...
Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables?
Yeah, it might have been in God We Trust Incorporated. Might have been the one. I have to look it up. But one of the Dead Kennedy albums ended up getting Jello Biafra and company brought before the government because in it was a Giger poster of, like, rotting vaginas or some shit. So they got arrested for delivering harmful matter to minors, which then became one of his titles to one of his spoken word performances. So, yeah, should have started this off with the Dead Kennedys. Missed opportunity, just like Ripley's daughter. Moving on. 1992, Alien 3, in which they undo everything that was done in the conclusion of the second movie. This thing is a muddled mess, both on screen and in pre-production. And I'm going to... It was Frankenchrist. Oh, you ain't kidding, Buster. This thing was the monster that was made up of spare parts of various humanity that was then struck by lightning and should have been drowned in its own pudding. Sean, my historian, my friend, he who gives life to music, I want you to give life to the history of this thing. Tell a tale. Tell us how in great painstaking detail how the studio wanted another Alien movie, and there were all kinds of people brought in to create this thing, and how it was dog-fucked every step of the way.
I take back so fucking much of what I said leading up to this episode about how this movie wasn't that bad. I take so goddamn much back. When one of the nicest things I can say, well, two of the nice things I can say about the movie are, number one, fuck yeah, Charles S. Dutton, and number two, fuck yeah, Paul McGann. And we're talking about an Alien movie. Your Alien movie has failed. You have fucked the dog and slut-shamed it. Basically, it goes a little something like this. Going way, way back, 20th Century Fox wanted 2 more Alien sequels. Be the fuck careful what you wish for. And once more, it was going to be the Weyland-Yutani Corporation versus people with sense. In this case, it was supposed to be this kind of more militarily aggressive culture. Sigourney Weaver was only supposed to be in the third movie very, very briefly, and then Michael Biehn was supposed to be back as Hicks in the next one. Or rather, he was supposed to be Hicks in the third one. In Alien 4, eventually, Ripley would come back in some way or another. And quite frankly, even Sigourney said, you leave me out of this. I want no part of this. I actually like the first 2 movies. Okay, I'm kind of putting words in her mouth here. So they even tried to get Ridley Scott on board to direct Alien 3. They really tried. They approached William Gibson by the script for the third film, and he agreed to it. However, ultimately, the head honchos of Fox, namely President Joe Ross, didn't like the idea of Ripley being taken out of a movie entirely because he felt that she was the linchpin of the whole Alien franchise. She was the conductor that drove the train. To quote him, she was, quote, really the only female warrior we have in our movie mythology. Keeping in mind, I'm pretty sure that by this point, yes, in fact, Terminator had fucking hit theaters. Unfortunately, by this point, and to be fair, I'm also pretty sure Red Sonja had hit theaters too. So, touche on that whole point. However, ultimately, money talks. They offered Sigourney about $5 million, gave her a share of the box office receipts, and she was on board. And it went through multiple rewrites, including one idea which I actually kind of like, in which the battle with the aliens was actually brought to Earth, which kind of would have been a logical extension of the first 2 movies, is they finally get down to the planet. Ultimately, what we end up with is the draft in which the ship containing Ripley and Newt and the remains of Bishop and, I don't know, presumably fucking Jonesy.
Hicks. Wasn't Hicks on the ship?
Yes, thank you. And Hicks. I almost forgot. Yeah, Hicks was on board too. That ends up crash landing on the yellow-tinted penal planet. Go ahead. Make your own jokes. I'll fucking wait. I got coffee. And there were even some kind of different ideas about this, including what would eventually become, believe it or not, the Ripley clone plot of Alien Resurrection. This was also the one that was going to introduce a bunch of presumably very toyetic different alien subspecies, like a spike, a rogue, one that could blend in with its surroundings, all hive predator. And I guess it was also going to kind of flesh out the life cycle a little bit more. So there you fucking go, Mark. You almost got what you wanted. So ultimately, they kept going forward, kept going with the rewrites until finally Walter Hill and David Giler kind of finally got a script in they could work with. And of course, Sigourney Weaver also had a clause written into her contract that those were the two people that had to give the final draft approval, because she ultimately thought that other than James Cameron, she was the only one who could really get the character right. David Fincher did some more work with it alongside author Rex Pickett, who was eventually fired, and ultimately it was Hill and Giler that ended up penning the final draft, and that kind of got us up mostly to where we were. I would also point out that this is the one where we kind of got the first real CGI aliens. And God, were they fucking obvious CGI aliens. I mean, really, really bad ones. Stan Winston, who had worked on, and either, if you feel free to correct me, on both of the first movies, wasn't available to work on this. So he handed it off to a couple other colleagues of his. H.R. Geiger was contacted by David Fincher because Fincher wanted the alien to be more feral, more like a cougar, more beastly and less human than it had been in the other movies, which, quite frankly, looked absolutely fucking ridiculous. So, I don't know. That's most what I had in my notes from the research that I did. And Mark, feel free to take it from there and start pointing out the areas where this went wrong, including an alien movie that has minimal involvement from the goddamn alien.
Well, okay. First thing, and I'm just going to say this now because I don't quite know when I'm going to be able to fit it in later on. This was the movie that Fox so desperately wanted. They desperately wanted an Aliens on Earth movie, and it would take until Aliens versus Predator Requiem before they. I know that the first Aliens versus Predator, the aliens are on Earth, but they're trapped in a temple the entire time. It doesn't count. They wanted an alien movie where the aliens were like running through your living room and shit, and and causing traffic pileups and whatever else. They wanted Jurassic Park 4 with aliens. That's what they wanted. And they wanted that to be this one. It didn't quite happen. This got rewritten 1,000 times, and they changed directors and everybody else, and they dropped, and it was. I had a friend of mine. People who listen to the show know that we will often drift off into pro wrestling stuff. Mm-hmm. I had a friend of mine who used to do a great impression of Vince McMahon, trying to sell Booker T on his really racist gimmick, where Booker T was going to be essentially a minstrel version of himself. And he was like, Booker, we really want you to be more black. That's offensive, Vince. I don't think that's really appropriate. Booker, here's 2 bags of gold, okay? Like Scrooge McDuck. Here's 2 bags of solid gold. Well, yes, sir, Mr. McMahon. I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Are you sure that was Booker T and not Saba Simba and Tony Atlas?
That's every black person that worked for Vince McMahon, but I digress. So here we have Sigourney Weaver. I have artistic issues with this movie. I don't think Ellen Ripley, really lends anything to this picture. Here's 2 bags of solid gold. Well, yes, sir, master. I'll do whatever aliens picture you want. You can't see it, but I'm doing a lot of hand motions right now. In any case, so I just that all needed to be said. But so here we have a movie which is just a shell of what anybody thought this was going to be. And it was literally it was one of those, it most closely resembles the stuff that never actually made it to the screen for the Superman movie. Well before David Goyer got his hands on it, and well before, somewhere I think in between Superman Returns and Man of Steel, there was this kicked around Superman picture that eventually got dropped. It was Alien 3, something along those lines. Only this one actually made it to the screen, and it probably shouldn't have. It starts off.
Was any of that English you were just speaking?
What? What's going on?
I have no idea what in the hell you're talking about.
What?
He might have had a stroke. Come on, give him a break.
You know what I'm talking about, the million rewrites of the Superman movie that never actually made it to the screen, and they eventually just dumped altogether, and they focused on Batman.
The Tim Burton movie?
Which goddamn one? Are you talking about John Peters and his giant spider?
Maybe. I know.
You know
all right.
Mark, you are squarely in Ozzy Snorted a line of ants territory, and to that I just respond, state the suplex to train.
You are well aware that there was an abandoned Superman project, yes or no?
I'm aware of a number of abandoned Superman projects.
Well,
I guess
I'm
that's
saying...
what point you're talking about.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. Any number of abandoned Superman projects reminds me of Alien 3. Only Alien 3 actually made it to the screen. Can we move on from this now, please?
I accept your argument that Chewbacca is a Wookiee. Yes, move on.
Thank you. Half the people listening to this going, fuck, is Radulich having a stroke? The other half going, that was genius. I'm right there with him. In any case.
No, actually, Mark, there are a number of people who are just waiting for you to talk about the time you caught a ferry over to Shelbyville because you needed a new heel for your shoe. You decided to go to Morganville, which is what they called Shelbyville in those days. So then you tied an onion to your belt, which was the style at the time, and to take the ferry cost a nickel. And in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 bees for a quarter, you'd say.
Your friend Jason's not going to come on this show anymore if you keep that up. Now listen.
That's fine. I was reciting in my head every word of that.
They start this movie up basically undoing everything they set up at the end of the last movie. They kill off Newt, Bishop, and Hicks, and and the only one that's left is the only one the studio gives a fuck about, and that's Ellen Ripley, Sigourney Weaver, right? Yep. They show you there's
they had to kill off Newt because Newt would have been 6 years older.
Yeah,
they couldn't really have had her.
There was a way to work around that, but we'll spend the next hour fantasy booking how Alien 3 could have gone, and that's not what the point of this podcast is. So they kill off those 3 characters, and the only one left is the only one the studio cares about. As I said, we have 2 face huggers. One is waiting and lurking around, eventually finds a dog to impregnate, and when we have our alien beastie dog thing. The other one lays a queen inside of Ripley, and I think is responsible for what causes the fire and for the escape pods to eject. So she lands on a prison planet, and let me say this. As much as I like him as an actor, can Charles S. Dutton ever play a role where he's not self-righteous? Jason, is it possible for Charles S. Dutton to not play the same fucking character in everything he does?
I liked Rock.
Yes. Oh, God, I love Rock.
He was charming and self-righteous in that one, but he's like, you ever see him in as the bus driver and Get on the Bus? The movie about
No, I've never seen that.
Oh my God! You want to talk about self-righteous? Jesus Christ! It's every movie.
Well, there's some actors who can't play any more characters. Okay. And just one. I mean, you got people who do it horribly badly, like Jesus Christ, I can't think of this guy, Adam Sandler. Okay, he plays one character, he does it really poorly. Terry Crews plays one character. I could watch him in every goddamn movie that's ever made. Okay, some people are just limited.
I would also point out Janitor and Rudy. You want a movie in which he is not self-righteous? I would not call what he is in Rudy self-righteous. Surly and prideful? Yeah, maybe. But self-righteous? No.
Nah, I would imagine if I go back and watch the movie, I'm going to have the same problem with that character as I do with every Charles S. Dutton performance.
But actually, this was his role. in the movie. He's supposed to be self-righteous.
I understand that, but I feel like it's the character that he plays in this. He plays Dylan. You know, the spiritual and de facto leader among the prisons is literally, he is Dylan in everything he plays to one degree or another. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, but you know what? He's Ronda Rousey's armbar. He might be a one-trick pony, but it's a pretty damn good trick.
All right, fair enough. So she lands on this planet. All she knows is that everyone around her is dead. And it turns out this is a abandoned prison colony where the prisoners there are pretty much just keeping the place running, and that's just sort of their penance in life. They're all double Y chromosomes, rapists and murderers, and sociopaths and such. The doctor, who was a former prisoner there, starts to look after her. They spend a lot of time building a relationship between the two of them. Both of them are hiding secrets from each other, and then just as they start to reveal themselves to each other, and they take their relationship to the next level, the alien kills him, making everything up to that point completely fucking useless. Then you have this the thing starts to kill more prisoners. It kills the warden, who doesn't want to admit there's a problem. It starts to kill some of the inmates who you have no idea who any of these people are. And then you get the small group of people who say, okay, we don't want to sit here and just be, eaten by the alien. We're gonna try to kill it, and we're gonna do so by trapping it in the lead works and dumping hot lead on it, and hopefully that thing, drowning in hot lead will kill this thing. At least we go out fighting. Meanwhile, Ripley finds out through all of this that she's got a queen in her and she's a dead person and she can't commit suicide. She just can't bring herself to do it. So she asks Dylan to do it, and Dylan says, "Not until you help us kill this thing first." And that's your movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to talk about, it almost is like they tried to go back to the first movie without. I say this a lot on this show. I want to get Jason's reaction to it. I feel like a lot of times a studio will look at a movie, will see that it was successful and go, just do that again. Everything that was successful about the first movie, just do it again, without really understanding what made it successful in the first place. So what you have is a lousy imitation, not really an independent movie, which is what I feel Alien 3 ultimately became. It became a mockery of the first movie. One beast killing a bunch of people in an enclosed area that they can't get out of. And
how many movies can you say that about? From the past 20, 25 years.
A lot.
Yes, a lot. I mean, the originality of Hollywood has been mocked for the last couple of decades because it's completely gone. So, I mean, it's a pretty common thing now. Studios are not. I mean, the average movie cost about $60 million to make. All right, that's going from something really low budget to a $300 million huge blockbuster that is not going to gross that. But anyway, you've got all this boils down to about $60 million that a studio is going to spend on a movie, and they want to make damn sure they're going to get that money back. So they're not going to take risks. They're going to take a movie that hey, this worked before, let's do it again. Fuck the audience. We want to make our money. That's just the economics of it.
And you know what? And I will say this: of the movies, and this is just speaking from personal taste, of the movies you got to go with, of the tried and true concepts to try to make a buck. Quite honestly, some of my favorites are movies that take place within an extremely limited scope like that. Even movies that a lot of other people don't necessarily like. There are a lot of people who didn't like the remake of 13 Ghosts, for example. I've thrown that out there as an example a few times. Quite frankly, fuck it. I loved it. I loved the enclosed sense of dread. I loved the fact that my focus was kept on one thing the entire time throughout the movie. I liked that there was not really, well, okay, there was a little bit of Deus Ex Machina in there, obviously, but there's not quite as much room for something to come out of nowhere if you've done it right, if you kind of stuck to your own rules. And Alien, that's one of the things that I absolutely loved about it, was the fact that it really wasn't all that complex of a movie. It was lots of dark, tight spaces and the crew realizing that, yeah, okay, we know where the alien's going, but the problem is it also knows where it can find us. We're not exactly hard for it to find either. It's just that in this movie, the problem with Alien 3 is nothing develops. Nothing happens. Nothing ever comes of this despite it being stuck on a colony. There's really precious few twists to it that really help develop that sense of desperation, that sense of dread that there was in the first two movies.
Well, and not just that, Sean. I agree with you on all that, but let's take it to something that I brought up a number of other times, which is about characterization and about making people care about your characters. Who thought it was a good idea to put it on a penal colony? Who really gives a shit about people who were so awful they got stuck on another planet? These are horrible. Nobody cares that they're getting eaten. They're cheering the alien for killing these people.
You don't want to get to know me, lady. I am a rapist and a murderer of women. Well, good. I'll put you in front of the alien then. Fantastic. Anyone else? There's a scene where like 5 of them tried to rape her. At which point I would have like tied them up and been like, "Here, alien bait."
You know what? As much as I love Charles F. Dutton, that has got to be one of the lamest, most forced, almost self-parodic line deliveries I have ever heard.
You don't want to get to know me, lady. Really? Because you're the most personal of the bunch.
And that was a moment where actually, yeah, he pretty much was the rapey janitor from Rudy.
So, any thought, Jason, as to why they decided to pull the extras from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, in this movie? Why did everyone have to be British? It was like what was the purpose of making every character in this movie, some sort of Southie English fucking soccer hooligan?
Everybody sounds better with a British accent.
What are you, my wife? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. No, I spent a month in England last spring, and every fucking person I met could make $1 million a year just talking on the radio over here. The voices are fantastic.
So here's my thought on this: it's they're looking at the script, and whatever they've got left of this Alien movie that I compared to an abandoned Superman project, and I was perfectly logical when I said that. So they're looking at this thing going, this is fucking dog shit. This is terrible. We can't even get good actors for this to read these lines and have it be even remotely believable. What if we cast all Brits except for Charles S. Dutton? Oh, yeah, then people will buy it.
Son, Paul McGann.
What was that?
You want to talk about no good actors in this? Pump your brakes, son. You're lumping Paul McGann in there.
Well, no, my point is that, to what Jason was saying, it was like, well, we've got dog shit here. Well, who can we get to deliver dog shit and make it look like filet mignon? British people. Fantastic. Go with it.
Well, just think about how bad the movie your impression of the movie would have been if they would have all been English or all been American.
Yeah.
Really? If they would have all been from Alabama. Okay.
No, I was going to say, if they'd all been like Ben Affleck and, who's his short partner's name? Good Will Hunting.
You mean the one who can act?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jason Bourne. What the hell?
Matt Damon.
There we go.
Matt Damon.
Had all the prisoners been Ben Affleck and Matt Damon from Good Will Hunting? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the movie done with a terrible Boston Southie accent?
Well, okay, Mark. Allow me to kind of dump this on his head then. Suppose that every British actor in this movie went to the Charlie Hunnam School of Acting, and the entire movie sounded absolutely exhausted from trying to mask their accents.
I'm just picturing Ben Affleck rolling from the alien. Hey, this fucking thing is after me.
No, seriously, have you ever watched an episode of Sons of Anarchy?
No, I have not.
I have not either.
Who was it? Our outstanding title, I think it was our outstanding title card artist, Ben Cologne, said the other day that he started watching it. And I think, God, I swear, it was either Winfrey or it was Ben. I forget which one, pointed out to me, is it just me, or does he sound like it's just absolutely sapping the life out of him trying to mask his British accent?
You know, as you say that, here's my thought. If anyone if they were going to recast Alien 3, they should have done it with Walter Goggin and just a clone of Walter Goggin. Just have all the prisoners be Walter Goggin.
And you know what? Quite frankly, he kind of got a point about it, because when you really think about that, all through Sons of Anarchy, Hunnam, the only thing I can compare him to is the way Kiefer Sutherland always delivered every line in 24 like he had just gotten done running a half marathon.
Jason, anything more to say about this dog shit of a movie?
Originally the movie, one of the original scripts of the many that were bandied about was not going to be about Ripley. It was going to be about Hicks. Yep. Having an alien inside him, which I thought would have been, quite interesting. I think at this point, Sigourney Weaver had done enough. As much as I like watching Sigourney Weaver in her underwear, but my main problem with the movie is who thought it was a great idea to stick him on a penal colony. Really, it must have been a budgetary reason. It had to have been a budgetary reason.
Well, I think they were trying to explore different dystopic places and scenes, and different areas of this sort of dark universe that they could explore. And what more darker place can you go to than a penal colony? The problem, as we were saying, is that none of the characters are particularly sympathetic. And then your one survivor is the asshole who keeps saying, "Let's just give up." Like the one guy who didn't want to fight at all. Besides, you have like one guy who wants to wait to be rescued. And then the one prisoner who's just like, well, we're all going to die and let's kill Ripley because she's the one that brought it here. He's your survivor. It's like, we again, to bring it back to wrestling, it's how do you want to send your audience home? Do you want to send them home happy, or do you want to send them home, kind of sad, with an ending where the heel goes over, a particularly unpopular heel, not even one that gets sort of a sympathetic, anti-hero, kind of cheering from the crowd. It's the Alberto Del Rio. It's the one that everyone just absolutely hates because he's terrible. And so you already know you're going to kill Ripley at the end, and so you're one guy you're going to hang your hat on for everyone to cheer and say at least he survived as the asshole who no one likes. Go ahead.
No, well, let's look at the original premise of the show that you brought me in on was the studio. The producers, the bad decisions that were made by the people with the money to make these movies, and what sounds more logical to you? Them trying to explore a darker side of humanity in the alien universe, or them saying, well, if we bring the alien to Earth, there's lots of different sets we're going to have. We get this abandoned warehouse. All we have to do is throw some fucking lights on. Okay, let's just stick the alien there.
We have a set from A Nightmare on Elm Street that's just collecting dust. Let's use that.
Yeah.
Now I want to see Freddy versus the aliens. That'd be funny.
I really am pissed off that Hollywood flirted with the idea of Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, and they didn't do it.
Oh yeah, you got to get Sean started, and we got so precious little time. We have 5 minutes of live time left, and I want to thank Jason for hanging out with us. He's going to go shortly. So we have one movie that I quickly want to address, just because it is the quadrilogy, and so we would be remiss if we didn't mention it at all. And then we're going to bid Jason a fond farewell until 2 weeks from now, when we discuss the Predator movies, and that is Alien Resurrection, which is set 200 years after the conclusion of Alien 3, where they take blood samples from the prison from Ellen Ripley, and they bring her back to life via cloning, complete with Alien Queen in tow, for the purpose of taking the Alien Queen out of her, breeding aliens so that they can train them to be biological weapons. And this is all. And by this point, the Weyland-Yutani Company wasn't bailed out by the Galactic Bank, and it went under. This is actually a military operation. So that's the premise of your movie right there. Now, and then this cloned version of Ripley is like half human, half alien. Jason, I know you need to go soon, and I want you to plug anything that you're working on. So just going to give me your 50-word or less, anything that you feel needs to be said about Alien Resurrection. Obviously, it shouldn't have been made. I think pretty much people agree universally on that. But your analysis, things that, if you've only got a little bit of time left to say it, what it is you want to say about this movie.
It co-stars Winona Ryder and Ron Perlman. If you can't find somebody better to be in your movie than Winona Ryder and Ron Perlman, don't make it.
I just got finished watching it before the podcast started, literally 20 minutes before the podcast started, and I walked out of my bedroom and I looked at my wife and I said, Alien Resurrection, a great concept executed poorly. Agree or disagree?
No, I thought it was absolutely horrible. Nobody wanted to see that.
Really? You don't the idea of the military sort of breeding aliens? Forget about Ripley. That's what I mean by executed poorly. Just the concept of if they had it's just started with they have a queen that they've managed to capture. Wasn't this one of the plots of one of the comic books in Dark Horse where the military had actually captured a queen and was using it to like breed aliens that they were trying to train, and it went poorly?
I don't know. I have not read that.
Okay.
When I think about this, not take the military aspect out of it, just thinking about the alien and human being spliced together, I'm thinking of Species. That's all that pops in my head. I've seen that part. I've seen it. It was done better.
Okay, fair enough. Before we go, quick, anything that you're doing, places you want to turn people to in order to follow you, how to follow you, find you, etc. Go.
I'm on Twitter at Jason Offutt. I've got my latest book, Sean has mentioned, Across a Corn-Swept Land. It's a humorous travel log where I drink a lot of beer. And I have a zombie novel coming out. I don't have a release date. It was supposed to come out late 2013, but it's now pushed back to 2014. It's called The Dead Empty, and there's lots of death and cussing and boobs.
All right, sir. Despite apparently my drift into semi-literate talking about Superman and comparing it to aliens, I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight and wanting to come back in 2 weeks.
I would love to. I'll love to dig into the Predator, especially Predator 2. Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks to discuss Predator, Predator 2, and the most recent Rodriguez rendition of the franchise Predators. So thanks a lot, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Yep.
Our pleasure.
All right, Sean. I know you didn't watch Alien Resurrection. You barely wanted to talk about it, but I'm gonna poke you a little bit and make you say something. You can say anything you want about this movie, but you can't repeat what Jason said. Alien Resurrection. Go.
Is there really to say except that this was a movie nobody wanted, and it's the ultimate example of no writer is perfect. Sometimes in the developmental process, something probably fleetingly sounds like an interesting idea. It's hard to tell whether that was Joss Whedon's thinking or whether it was just a matter of, fuck it, money. And I seem to remember at one point, I think it was when he was on the Nerdist Writer. He was on either, I forget which Nerdist show it was. It was either Nerdist Writers Panel or Making It with Ricky Lindholm. I could swear they actually asked Joss about this movie. And I don't remember which of the two he said kind of was his opinion of it. But I know that he wasn't really thrilled with the way that it came out. It was a stupid, convoluted concept in the first place, and ultimately, this is a franchise that should have just been stopped at 2 movies. It would have told the story just fine right then and right there. I think Alien 3 should have just been stopped by the time it got to about the second or third draft, because somewhere along the line, among those drafts, we ended up getting what ultimately became this movie. So, just yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not sure really what's left to say about it that Jason didn't say. It's not a good concept executed badly. It's a stupid concept executed expectedly stupidly.
Well, no, see, that's a small disagreement I'm going to have with you, because the concept of the species part of it, I agree with him. I wish they had just left that whole. First of all, again, the studio hanging its hat on Sigourney Weaver, where the real star of this thing is the aliens, and if they had actually understood that, this might have been a better movie. If you wanted to go back, Alien Resurrection was an opportunity to almost do a reboot of the franchise, to take it in a new direction and sort of explore some of the things that they wanted to do with some of the other movies. This could have been the way that this was set up. The third act is supposed to be where the aliens are on Earth. This had the potential. They could have done this movie with a better cast of pirates. First of all, so let me quick get into the plot of this. So, as I said, you have Ron Perlman, Winona Ryder, and a bunch of other actors who play mercenaries, who are paid to kidnap a bunch of workers who are in cryostasis and bring them on board as hosts for what will eventually be aliens. They clone Ripley for the purpose of taking the Queen out of her, and they really don't need Ripley anymore, but they leave her alive. Let's pretend for a moment that they just got an alien queen, right? They have a full-blown alien queen chained up in the basement. They've got this, they've got a whole thing rigged and set up so that they can control the aliens. They can move the bodies in there, and the whole movie then, goes exactly the way it goes in this movie, which wasn't necessarily bad in that sense. You take the Ripley stuff out of it. If you do sort of a phantom edit of this movie where you remove Anakin Skywalker, you remove Ripley and just say, here's your plot. Pirates bring a bunch of bodies in to deal with this alien project where they're going to breed and tame aliens and make them into biological weapons. This is the ultimate dream of the Weyland-Yutani company, right? And the aliens do exactly what they do in the movie. They figure out that they're being fucked with, and they realize that they can escape if they kill one of themselves and let the acid eat their way out, which I thought was awesome. I thought it was a great scene. So they escape, and then they start terrorizing people on the ship, and they start killing military people, and they start going after the pirates, and they figure the only way out of this thing is that they crash the ship. And they do, except the aliens don't die this time, and there is no stupid scene where the Queen gives birth to a half-alien, half-human thing that thinks Sigourney Weaver is its mother. All right? Take that part out of the movie, too. Just crash the fucking ship with 1,000 xenomorphs on it. Right? And have them all burst out of the ship like fucking cockroaches, and have them start, and run wild on the Earth, and let the last part of that movie be Earth dealing with this sort of thing. You can almost make it like a Planet of the Apes thing, where the end of it is the aliens wreck the planet, and all that's left are a small group of surviving humans, and now you've got your next movie, the Alien 5 Salvation, something along those lines. But like I said, that's what I mean by this was a good idea executed poorly. They had the bare bones. They had the structure of what could have been an awesome movie and an awesome way to take the franchise, and instead they were just like, shit. Let's just take out the part that we really wanted in the first place, the Earth part, hang our whole thing on Sigourney Weaver, and make this whole thing make her the focus of this movie. That's where I think the picture ultimately fails. And then some of the casting choices were terrible. Winona Ryder, I don't know what Jean-Pierre Jeunet thought he was doing as an actor's director, but apparently they decided for her that screaming all of her dialogue would be a good idea. Yell a lot in this movie.
Winona Ryder is to the point where it's not so much that I wonder how she keeps getting work. I just wonder how she keeps getting work in the kind of high-profile projects that she gets.
Well,
It's not how do you even get a role? How did you get that role?
I don't know who. I mean, I guess Winona Ryder was hot in 1997, so it's one of those deals where they stick the hot actress in everything. But still, Winona Ryder belongs in the sort of, romantic comedy kind of a thing, the awkward woman, something where you need kind of an awkward girl in a romantic comedy. That's where you stick Winona Ryder, or where you need somebody who's a shoplifter. Something like that would have been fun.
Really? Not the shoplifting reference?
Sure. I'm all over the place tonight. Welcome to 2014, everybody. But no, seriously, you could, that's where you put Winona Ryder. You don't put her as essentially, she was supposed to be like the hero of this thing. It was her and Sigourney Weaver who was supposed to be shouldering this whole picture, and she's just terrible.
Yeah, Sigourney can really kind of pull off the depth of the heroine and the strength of it. And you know what? I'll even come right out and kind of give a little commentary on one of the things that I really like the most about Sigourney Weaver, and what I think really kind of deserves to be one of her legacies as an actress. And that is that as an action heroine, she's one of only a handful you can point to from about the 1970s onward who manages to really kind of be convincing in a very gritty, get your hands and face dirty action type of role without it really feeling either like she's trying too hard or like somebody was trying too hard to make her accepted it. That kind of that John Cena kind of thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing where somebody behind the things is going, God is my witness, you will believe this woman can kick ass. It's kind of like, okay, the best example I can come up with, fucking Carrie Ann Moss. You know what? You people want to call me whatever you want to for what I'm about to say. Go right ahead. Come at me, bros. Do it. But, had it not been for the fact that in The Matrix, you're able to suspend disbelief through the plot device of it being a computer system, and if you can think it, you can do it, that is one of the least believable ass-kicking action women in the history of all cinema. Period. Woman has got the body of a yoga instructor. or a catwalk model, quite frankly.
Oh, who's the broad that got cast as Wonder Woman? Who looks like she needs to eat a sandwich?
Oh God, the little bitty one who, in her first fucking interview for the role, demonstrated she's never probably read Wonder Woman in her life. Yeah, go ahead, call me out on that one too. I dare you. Yeah. No, I'm sorry, but movies are a visual medium. Period. That means that the people you cast in certain roles have to have a certain kind of presence. Otherwise, it is going to be goddamn distracting. So, no, Sweetie Belle, I don't care how often you point out that the Amazons mythologically only had one breast. Wonder Woman was never drawn that way. Never. Are people
actually making that argument?
No, that was a quote actually from one of her interviews. And I will give her this. I will give her that physically, yes, apparently she has got the martial arts background, or at least is training in it, to be able to handle the hand-to-hand combat.
Okay, hang on a second. If we're going to start saying people with martial arts backgrounds automatically will make good superheroes, then I say Demetrius Johnson as Colossus in the next X-Men movie.
Okay, yeah, and thank you. That is exactly my point. The point is the fact that what is undeniably true is you are going to be standing this woman on screen next to, look her up, Mark. What is her height listed at? What is she, about 5'10" or so?
Well, what's her name? Is it Broad, who was too skinny to be Wonder Woman, or does she have a real name?
Oh, well, I don't remember her name. You may have to Google search that one. I really legitimately don't remember.
Just keep doing your thing here, and I'll look it up.
Yeah, you're going to be standing her up She's about, I seem to recall she was about 5'9", 5'10". Okay, those of you out there, friends of me who have met me, I'm about between 5'9" and 5'10". So she's going to be about my height. Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, I believe, are both north of 6 feet. And this is your Amazon. This is your pick to play in Amazon. I hope you're shooting this very creatively, because the point that I'm also getting at is the fact that...
She's 5'10".
Yeah, okay, 5'10". So she would have about an inch of height on me, at best. No, I'm sorry. It's not convincing, and it's going to be fucking distracting. Because if you're going to put a woman in that role, she has to be able to carry off the physicality convincingly. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to ignore the fact that the Clairol model is hanging in midair, delivering an Anderson Silva front kick. And like I said, any other movie except one with that plot device, you are going to go bullshit. Even in Resident Evil, you have to throw in the fact that Mila Jovovich, who might be the closest modern thing we have to Linda Hamilton and Sigourney Weaver, you have to point out that she's been genetically modified. So you've got to throw that in there. On the other hand, you've got a woman like Sigourney Weaver, or especially Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2, convincingly, totally, absolutely pull that off. 100%. It totally works. You totally buy them in those roles. In Sigourney's case, it's admittedly partially just due to the fact that she's not doing a whole lot of hand-to-hand combat, but just the fact that she's very gritty. But especially when it comes to Linda in Terminator 2, you got to keep in mind, at one point, famously, during one of the sets, she had to keep telling one of the actors, who, according to the script, was supposed to give her a good one in the gut with a billy club, come on, hit me, really hit me. Take after take, he kept pulling his blow because he was nervous about hurting her. Later on in the shoot comes a scene when she's got to hit him. And she let him have a stiff one because he wouldn't really hit her. All the pull-ups she's doing, those were really Linda doing the fucking pull-ups. So authenticity counts for a lot. And I don't know why sometimes studios will resist that and will try to go in the opposite direction and kind of intentionally and obviously try to cast somebody who really shouldn't be in some of these roles. I mean, help me out here, Mark, because I've gotten into this conversation with a few people. Who are some other people that you think should have been cast to play Wonder Woman?
Gina Carano.
And you know what? Right there, that is my first number one choice.
Yeah, Gina Carano's already been in a couple of movies. She wasn't going to be the star of this thing, you know. And again, if you wanted to go on and do a Wonder Woman movie, there are far worse people than Gina fucking Carano. We could, but she's 5'8", so she's 2 inches shorter than the broad that they put in this. And at least this one looks like she's eaten a sandwich recently, you know,
yeah,
and can actually kick people's ass.
Yeah, and for those of you out there who are just probably now think that our arguments have just been deflated, no, that is the difference. Is we talk about a zero-sum game and this making up for that. You've got the woman they've cast is skinny. She's bony. She has a model physique, not necessarily an Amazon physique. Gina might be 2 inches shorter, but she's got the curves, she's got the muscle, she's still gorgeous. She's always been the first person that I've pictured. Actually, my second pick, though, would have been, if you couldn't have gotten Gina Carano, and I got to look up how tall she is, kind of be prepared to defend myself on this one. In terms of physique, Jessica Biel.
I would have gone with Jamie Alexander.
Okay.
Jamie Alexander plays Sif in the new Thor movie, and I think she would have been perfect as Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I think she would have. I think she would have been really. She would have been really, really good. But yeah, then the problem you've got there is the fact that she's kind of locked in with Disney and Marvel. So I'm not sure they would have let her go on that one. And yeah, now that I look it up, Beale is 5'8". However, she's also got a fairly curvy but athletic physique. So,
okay, I'm actually looking at her now. Yeah, I could have bought her as Wonder Woman, I think.
Jessica Biel? Yeah, well, I mean, she was actually fairly believable in Blade Trinity.
Yes, as terrible a movie as that was. So just to bring this around, you have Sigourney Weaver, who is roughly 7 feet tall, and then you have Winona Ryder, who is about Hobbit size. And and the first time they reveal who Winona Ryder is supposed to be, she's like, "I'm here to kill you because I can't deal with you being an alien in this world." Okay. Well, it was something. I mean, I'm massacring the line here, but it was along those. She basically goes looking for Sigourney Weaver because she's got it in her head that she's going to kill her. And and it's funny because Sigourney Weaver is now half alien and she has superpowers and all this stuff. But even if she wasn't, if Winona Ryder threatens Sigourney Weaver, how does Sigourney Weaver not just punch her dead in her shit and go like, "You're going to do nothing of the kind, little girl"? Totally believable when Sigourney Weaver says, "Don't make me make you." When she's later on, she's trying to get her to do something, and she's like, "Do I have to?" And she says, "Don't make me make you." It's like, okay, but you're threatening even without all the alien stuff.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing I will say for Sigourney. Sigourney carries off being pretty damn intimidating throughout the movie pretty well.
Yeah, it's when she stands up to like Ron Perlman and stuff. It's actually believable she could punch him dead in his shit too.
Yeah, because. Ron Perlman is not a small man. No.
He does an impression of an ape in the beginning of it, and it's just like, no, I'm pretty sure that's what you really are.
Yeah, if you've ever seen Ron in, well, fucking practically anything Ron Perlman has ever been in, whether it's Sons of Anarchy or Hellboy or Blade 2 or Blade 2. Yeah. He's pretty much a big, intimidating giant in just about everything. That is just kind of his lot in film. So when Sigourney can step to him and kind of pull it off like that, and you're kind of going, "Yeah, I'm not saying a word." No, that speaks to the kind of presence that you have as a female action hero.
Hey, Sean, real quick, to just to sort of close out, to your recollection and your research, what was the point of Alien Resurrection? What was it the studio was going for? Why did they want to, after they had already killed off Ripley, other than they wanted to make more Alien movies, what were they, in a perfect world, what was the studio trying to do here? And I know Joss Whedon wrote the script and they basically ruined his vision. But what was it they were going for in the first place?
That's actually a good question because I really didn't bother researching that all that much. So let's take a look and see what we can find real quick from the great bastion of knowledge that is Wikipedia, and see if maybe that reveals.
Should I play a commercial while you proceed to do research in the middle of the show?
What'd you say?
Should I play a song or a commercial while you go and do research here?
No. I'm just, as we're talking, I'm kind of thumbing through to see if I can really find something interesting about the genesis of this. But really, I can't find anything short of Fox Fox wanted money, and actually the closest thing I can kind of come to finding this out, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't really think to look this up before the show, was the fact that killing off Sigourney Weaver, the idea of it, according to Fox, was kind of a good way to kind of set things up for maybe Alien versus Predator. To kind of go for with that. Although Sigourney apparently thought that maybe there was a chance to maybe explore Ripley's character a little bit through the cloning, and that maybe it would add a certain element of uncertainty or a new rift or a new wrinkle to explore, and that was why she signed up in the first place. Oh, and also the fact that she got a producer's credit and an $11 million salary.
Yes, the Vince McMahon bag of gold.
Really, that's what it comes down to when you get so many of these awful sequels. It's the kind of thing that kind of led to me making some certain decisions I did recently, and where I chose to kind of ply my craft. Is you look around and you see the matter of money versus quality, and ultimately money won out. There wasn't really all that strong of a concept here in the first place, and it sounds almost like everybody kind of had to convince themselves along the way that this could work.
What kills me about this is that, again, what the studio wanted more than anything else was a movie where the aliens go to Earth, and it sounds like Whedon's original script ends with that, and they cut it out of the movie for some odd reason. Which, if anyone listening to this show wants to write me at Mark Radulich on Twitter, or find me on Facebook, or send me an email, or an Instagram, or a Pinterest, or Tumblr, or whatever the hell else you want to get in touch with me. However, carry a pigeon, I don't care. If someone out there can explain to me why, if they wanted it to finally go to Earth, and it does, why they would cut that out of the movie to give you the ending that they got instead, which was terrible, I would love to hear it from you. But I think we're going to cut it there for tonight. Anything left to be said about the aliens? As I started off with tonight, I feel like there was a great amount of potential for these movies. And the first two were great. The second two leave a lot to be desired. So ultimately, so even without the improvements I talked about for the first two, there was room for improvement here, especially with the last two. But overall, the Aliens, I think, is a lesson, and maybe the studios need to keep the fuck away from the artists and just let them make the movies, and they can collect their money. I know people who work in studios, want to prove their worth and that they're talented people too, and that they're creative people. An accountant can work anywhere. You choose to work in movies because, to some degree or another, you want to be part of that process. Okay, but there's a reason why some people should be accountants, and some people should be screenwriters, and some people should be podcasters, and some people should work in a jail as a mental health person. We all have things that we're good at, and maybe it's best we try not to do somebody else's job where we might not be so good at what those people are doing. And to that I say, maybe the studio should have just stayed the hell out of the business of the people making Aliens movies and just collected the money like a good pimp. Sean, final word, and then we'll get out of here.
One thing that I don't think we touched on quite enough about these movies is the visual style of them. And you have to give a lot of credit for how memorable the two really good movies are visually to H.R. Geiger. And I was talking about this with Ben as he was creating our title card this week. He said that he really wanted to do something that was inspired by Geiger for this week's title card. And of course, for those of you for whom that's kind of an unfamiliar name, he is a Swiss painter, sculptor, and set designer who specialize in a very surrealist bent. And actually, his visual effects team won an Academy Award for their design work on Alien. And he creates a look throughout the first two movies in which everything is very cold and very austere. But at the same time, especially in Aliens, there's a sense also of being surrounded by a particularly remorseless kind of life too. At the same time, that you're really within the organic belly of a beast and trying to fight your way out. Especially with the way he designs the exoskeletal structures and the cocoon structures and the bindings of the xenomorphs, and the way they're kind of integrated with the steel throughout both Colony and the Nostromo. You really have to give that a lot of credit. And the way Ben put it, and I really couldn't put it any better than he did, was the man wields an airbrush like it's an extension of himself. Very, very true. Absolutely.
One of the reasons why the Giger stuff works so well was also because of the design of the aliens themselves. And so when you have what you have is this sort of biotech scenery, which really works well with sort of a biotech alien, which looks both mechanical and natural at the same time. And so what you end up with is scenes where the walls come to life. Imagine you walk into a room and the room appears empty, and suddenly shit just starts popping out of the walls that you didn't see before and attacks you. That's horrifying. You can't prepare to fight what you can't even see, and that was sort of the trick with the aliens. It was, you watch the Marines walk into the scene, and it's very tight, and the walls feel like they're just jutting out, and everything's very circular and rounded out, and suddenly the walls just come to life, and everything is moving, and people are screaming, and there's cuts to static, and it is horrifying and exhilarating all at the same time. And I'll even go to the first Alien movie where Ellen thinks she's safe on the ship, and she sees the wall, and the wall looks really peculiar to her, and she just walks up to it, and the alien, and that's when you realize as a hand shoots out that the alien is there and it's sleeping. It's like, yikes.
But there's something else that's just as important, and it's something about movies that frustrates me to absolutely no end, despite the number of examples that prove, without beyond a shadow of a doubt in any movie fan's eyes, exactly what I'm about to say. I would love it. I would have so much admiration for any filmmaker out there who just once would make a movie of this kind, or an action movie, and just lay themselves out one rule. If we can't find a way to do it practically and do it for real, we don't do it. Period. Just where that is what the standard is, and it is kept to throughout every stage of production. Every single one. If we cannot find a way to do this without advanced CGI, we just take it off the table and we find something else. We work around it. Because when you do that in a movie, when things are done practically, and it's clear that they're done practically, with the exception of some of the times when they're really obviously very cheap and distractingly so, such as some of the Harryhausen stop motion, Army of Darkness. When you have something to which you can't remove yourself from it and say it's just computers, it's nothing but pixels, it's nothing but actors against a blue screen, it becomes that much more unsettling. It becomes that much scarier when it's clear to you that it's actually physically there, even if you know that it's a visual effect. Good example, compare the first Nightmare on Elm Street to the remake, specifically the wall scene. You know the one I mean when I say the wall scene. Shot of Nancy in her bed, and all of a sudden, Freddy's face and knives are creating an impression in the wall and pushing against it. First movie did it with what Wes Craven said at the time was a brand new material called spandex. The spandex wall. All it is. And you know what? You watch it, and even today, it actually looks pretty damn impressive. On the other hand, they go to make the remake. No, obvious CGI. And it takes you right out of it. I don't care if it's Evil Dead 2. I don't care if it's Alien or Aliens. And the fact is, keep in mind, in the first Alien, the alien was a 7'2" African immigrant that some crew members found in a bar. And just, no, seriously, that's the story behind it. He happened to have just this right kind of unnatural, unique, long proportion to his arms and legs in relation to the body. And they brought him in, suited him up, and he became the first xenomorph. If you look at the way Stan Winston engineered and puppeteered the Queen alien in Aliens, all of it is so damn good, and it manages to be scary because of the combination of H.R. Geiger's set design and the actual performance of the creatures and the visual effects team. I would love to see a movie just really challenge themselves to just be that scary again without having to resort to faking it with pixels. Because, unfortunately, it's rare anymore that anybody can do CGI to the point that you're left to go, oh, that was CGI? I really thought that was actually physically done. Bravo. The main movie I can think of that was able to pull that off was Jurassic fucking Park. That's what's always going to stick with me in particular about Predator, Alien, and Evil Dead 2. Is that ability to do it for real, but to do it in such a way that as you're watching, you're still so sucked in that you kind of completely forget that it isn't real. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
All right. So no great revelations here. In 2 weeks we are back. We will be doing Predator, Predator 2, and Predators. The Predator trilogy. We'll have Jason back. It'll be fantastic. And then 2 weeks after that, it'll be 90 minutes plus Aliens vs. Predator, and then Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. 2 weeks after that, I think, is Back to the Future. And then 2 weeks after that, you're going on vacation, and Patrick Mullen will be filling in, and we're going to be doing the Missing in Action series. I believe that's how I have it slated. And then I think March, I got to go back and look at the calendar. I know that right before I'm ready to leave, we're doing the Evil Dead trilogy, and I said that was a come one, come all. Anyone that wanted to jump in on that one, we would. I would open up the panel to anyone and everyone, except one person in particular, who wanted to be on the show and just kind of have fun with my last show before the imminent birth of my second child. So in the meantime, we've got plugs. So I'm going to let you go ahead, Sean. What do you got going on?
Okay, well, I'm going to kind of combine some plugs and some thanks with some site news here. Thank you again to the amazing, talented Benjamin Colon for another outstanding title card this week. Ye gods, if you see that thing in Mark and I don't live in your nightmares for at least a month.
Yeah, my wife thought that was creepy as shit.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful job on that. Visit his website for his personally created comics, soulexo.com, SOULEXO.com, where he has just published a brand new 3-page short story webcomic. definitely worth checking out. You can also find, of course, his other works every 2 weeks right here on Long Road to Ruin. On Monday, February 3rd, venture on over for my weekly music column, Give Life Back to Music, over at 411. No, not this time. Actually, that is going to be my debut at the new home of Give Life Back to Music, thecasualheroes.com. I'm very happy to be over there working with Gavin Napier and Patrick Mullen and Christopher Evans and that whole bunch. Tremendously excited. So come on over and check that out. I'm going to be kicking things off with a 4-week retrospective of the discography of the Dixie Chicks, after which myself and special guest music fan and 411 Mania columnist Tony Acero are going to be taking a look at Eminem's discography. Little bit of site news to talk about. Coming up, probably stay tuned to our Facebook page for it, to which Mark will post a link, I'm sure, on Blog Talk Radio and elsewhere. We are going to be debuting our new video format for the site on another new home for it. We're going to be debuting as early as this coming Monday over at Manic Expression on their ad-supported Springboard channel. I apologize for every time I have said it's Vimeo. It is Springboard. Big difference, and I apologize for that. It is Springboard. That's going to be a huge chapter for us, but that kind of leads to another big announcement. It's entirely possible that we may not be known as Long Road to Ruin much longer. See, when I talked to Mike McKinney from Manic Expression, one of the issues we kind of had to sort out is the fact that we're kind of sort of using a Foo Fighters song without permission came up, and he asked that we remedy that for any of our submissions on their channel. That being said, I got on the horn today with a very professional and very reasonable BMI publishing rep who informed me that there's also the possibility that there may even be an issue with our show being called Long Road to Ruin. So, show's not ending, it's just that we may have to rebrand it sometime within the next month or two. We'll kind of let you know when we know something, but in the meantime, we're going to be looking at new options for a theme song and new options for a name.
Thinking of just calling it Ham Sandwich.
Ham Sandwich. But in the coming months, we're going to have a lot more news as well as we keep going. A little bit later on this month, we are going to be, and keep your eye on Facebook for updates on this, on February 19th over at manicexpression.com, either just myself or myself and Mark are going to be on their official podcast, Digression Session, to kind of formally introduce this show of ours to their crowd. And as always, I'm just going to kind of close this up by saying, thank you to everybody. Mark and I were just going over the list, I forget what you call them, the archive listening stats, I think. The archive listen stats for our various shows. My God, we've got more listeners out there than we ever realized. Thank you, every single last one of you. We're getting bigger and bigger, and we're trying to find newer and better ways to entertain you all and to entertain even more people. But above all, we just always want to be grateful for everybody that kind of lets us into your ear holes for 2 hours plus every other couple of weeks. And we missed you all while we were gone. It feels great to be back. And please, by all means, stay tuned, stick with us, and keep spreading the word around. We're almost up to 100 likes on Facebook, and I'd really like to clear that. So.
Okay. So, I want to echo all of the changes that are coming up. The stuff with the theme song, as I said to Sean, the stuff with the theme song and whatever we call this, ultimately it's Mark and Sean talking movies. You know, what we call ourselves Ham Sandwich. You know, Radulich and Broadcasting presents At the Movies. Whatever. The show in and of itself is not changing. We just may have to find a new new title and a new theme. You know, maybe I'll have my kid sing it, and that way the Foo Fighters can't sue because you wouldn't know it was the Foo Fighters. Speaking of my kid, next week another return. Metal Hammer of Doom is back, and because Robert Cooper was absolutely right, there ain't shit to be had as far as new metal records worth talking about. I was playing around with some different ideas, and then I remembered we called the show the Metal Hammer of Doom, so, you know, we can't talk about Frozen. So that's the only thing I've listened to recently. So instead we're going to do a retrospective, a one-shot retrospective, 2 hours plus, just like tonight. Get it all in one podcast. We are going to be taking on the grandfathers of thrash. God bless you, Jeff Hanneman, Slayer. So Robert Cooper and I will be doing a retrospective of Slayer. That's January 14th. Got the calendar up right here. January 21st, we're back here for Predator. January 28th, another Metal Hammer of Doom. February 4th, AVP. February 18th, Back to the Future. March 4th, Missing in Action. And then there's actually not another show. March 18th is the original Evil Dead trilogy, and then I will be done with the show for about 2 months, depending on how things go with my son. So that's that. Other things I want to plug. I should be doing. If you go to the Casual Heroes right now, you'll see we finally did the draft recap. That was a really fun show where we were all asked to tear each other's roster apart. I did it, Pat did it, and then everybody else went into fantasy booking for some odd reason. It was odd. But it was a fun show. I wanted to plug Pat's podcast with the Casual Heroes, Championship Rounds, boxing podcast. It's really in Pat's wheelhouse, him and Gavin talking boxing for an hour or so. It's good stuff. Check that out. I should be on the next episode of the Casual Heroes real soon, talking about the possible future of Jeff Jarrett and whatever else is going on in the world of wrestling. Plus, I'm sure when we get around to doing the Royal Rumble preview and review, I'll be on that as well. Every Sunday is the 401 Ground and Pound radio show. Robert Winfrey did a great job of filling in for me last Sunday while I was at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique with my daughter, and they reviewed UFC Fight Night 34, which was the one from Singapore. This week, we've got another smaller Fight Night show. This one's got middleweight contenders Luke Rockhold versus Konstantinos Philippou. Both coming off losses, I believe, or one's coming off a loss, the other one's coming off a win, but an injury. I don't remember. In any case, they're headlining a show in Georgia at the Gwinnett Center or something along those lines. So we're going to preview that rather. That's January 15th. Robert Winfrey will be doing coverage. We're going to preview that this Sunday at 9 o'clock. So besides that, I believe that's it. The next time I do coverage will be January 25th, and that'll be for UFC on Fox. Ben Henderson versus Josh Thompson, provided one of them doesn't get injured. And I believe that is all she wrote. It was great to be back. I'm feeling good, and I'm excited about the next podcast. Also, always remember to check out 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, The Right Hook. And if you missed the 10 o'clock if you missed the live show, just check out the next day. It should be up in the archives. As I'm slowly getting back into the swing of things, I'll get some of the recent Casual Heroes WrestleCasts up. I've missed a few of them just because I've been busy lately. But I'll get into there soon, and I'll repost some of the Casual Heroes WrestleCasts that I wasn't able to get on. So until we see you again, be well, be safe, and behave.